seconds.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got Bet David? Valuetainment, giving values contagious. This world of entrepreneurs, we get no value to haters. How they run, homie, look what I become. I'm the one.
You would know because you lived it, right?
Wow.
I got blanks in different areas.
That's what it is. Okay, all right, area code. Today's episode is 303. Apparently, that's a Colorado area code. We got a special guest here with us. We got Larry Elder, the great Larry Elder here, who, he's got a lot to say. He's running for office.
The black face of white supremacy.
Yeah. I can't believe it. Larry went there right off.
Yeah. I work hard for that title. Come on.
There we go. Call him the black face of white supremacy. He is a political commentator, conservative radio host. The Larry Elder Show based in California. The show began local in KABC in 1993. Ran until 2008, and then his second show, KBC, from 2010 to 2014, and now is with Salem Radio. Tom, are you okay? Are you spazzing out? What is Tom doing?
I don't know, Pat.
It's okay.
What happened?
No, I just had to give a signal to Rob.
What's the signal? Tell us what the signal is.
Tell us what the best.
Now we have to pause to find what the signal's about. Go ahead.
I think Larry's mic is way too low. We can hardly hear him.
That was just me. I was being
okay.
being
All right.
Just trying to.
Tom, you're going to be okay.
Man.
Tom, I wish we could focus on Tom. Tom was spat. I thought for a second Tom was having a seizure. Yeah. But Tom's okay. Okay, so he authored a book as
I need to go to bed. It's what they told me to say.
As Goes California, my mission to rescue the Golden State and save the nation. By the way, he still hasn't left. He's one of the only ones that's stayed behind. I think he's going to be the last one to leave.
Yeah,
even California's left with one.
That book comes out, by the way, in November. I also have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Did you know
I was about to say that, which is pretty ridiculous.
That's amazing.
He's got a Hollywood star Walk of
Southeast
Fame.
corner,
Vine?
right next to Mary Pickford.
April 27, 2015.
Like you know who Mary Pickford is.
No, it's on Vine. Is it on Vine?
Is he the little guy on Treasure Island? Mary Pickford?
Yeah.
Did you ever think this was going to happen?
No.
Okay, so why not?
No.
Was that a shocker?
I didn't even care about movies when I was a little kid. My older brother Kirk loved movies. We'd go down to Hollywood and go down to the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He knew all the stars, and I'm like bored. And fast forward, I get one. It's just beyond my comprehension. It really is.
I think it's pretty sick for that to happen. I think it's right there. If you can focus in and
that's amazing.
They have a few radio guys who have them, but
it's a handful of
rare.
Vin Scully, Casey Kasem, and Larry Elder.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Arthur Godfrey.
Does Howard Stern have one or not yet?
No, he does not. Not that I know of. I don't
No,
think
he wouldn't. Yeah, he wouldn't leave his house
Very
because of COVID.
Larry, what year
Very
did you
interesting.
get the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame?
Pardon me?
What year did that happen?
2015.
Do you think you would get it today in today's
I
political
have
climate?
no idea. I was surprised I got it then. I've been
really?
nominated many times. I never got it. And I get a phone call, and they're telling me that I got it. So
That's great.
Well, congratulations. That's a big deal. And you're running right now for president.
Right. Ran for governor of California. I got 3.5 million votes, which is kind of interesting because I didn't make the first debate stage. And the whole point behind having criteria is to make sure that anybody that fogs up a mirror who thinks he wants to run for president can't demand a spot on the debate stage. And I get that. But I ran for governor, got 3.5 million votes. There were 46 people who wanted to replace Gavin Newsom. I finished number one of all the other replacement candidates. I got 49% of the total vote on the replacement side. The next highest person, and there were independents, Republicans, and Democrats that ran, next highest person got 9%. Highest Republican after me got 7%. And I got in with just 8 weeks left. In 8 weeks, I raised $27 million. 150,000 individual donors. Half of them came from outside of California. California has 58 counties. On the replacement side, I carried 57 and 58. And by the way, I wasn't the state party person that they wanted. They wanted a guy named Kevin Faulconer. He was a two-term mayor of San Diego. The National Party wanted Faulconer. Kevin McCarthy told all the Republicans in the House in California to stay out of the race unless it was Kevin Faulconer. I carried San Diego County by 30 points. And I thought at some point, when it was obvious I was the guy that the base wanted, that the National and State Party would either endorse me or give me some verbal support or give me some money. They did neither.
So why do you think they didn't? Is it because you think...
I wasn't the guy, I wasn't establishment. I was complete total grassroots. I mean, I never ran for anything. I didn't think I was going to get into the race. The others had been running for months. I got in the last minute, and I went to the top right away. I shocked them.
You said it so fast, as if it's not a big deal. $27 million, 8 weeks, 150,000 donors, 50%
right.
Not in the state of California.
And by the way, there was a recall election in 2003 in California. That's how Arnold Schwarzenegger became governor. Since then, there are 5% more registered Democrats in California. There are 33% fewer registered Republicans, and 50% more registered independents. And independents in California vote Democrat. So with a battlefield far more daunting, I did just as well as Arnold Schwarzenegger did. He got 49%, I got 49%.
Why do you think it wasn't even close and Newsom won it and it wasn't even like a converse? It was 61, 63%, ended up being 60%. Why do you think that?
I got outspent about 10-1. And for a while, the recall part was in the margin of error. And they were scared bleepless. In came Obama, in came Joe Biden, in came all the money, teachers union, and they turned it around, and he ended up keeping his job pretty comfortably. However, he had to spend 50% more to retain his job than he did to get his job. But they turned it into a national race. They said, if you watch the commercials, and I can count the ridges on my thumb now because of it, I've taken one picture with Donald Trump. Both of us had our thumbs up. So every commercial was a picture of Elder and Trump side by side with our thumbs up. And the line was always the same: stop the Republican takeover. Nobody said Gavin Newsom was doing a great job the way he shut down the state in a more severe way than anybody else. Gavin Newsom was doing a great job on education, doing a great job on budget, on crime, on homelessness. They never said that. They just said, stop the Republican takeover. And Republicans are outnumbered in California 3-1. And that's all they had to do. There hasn't been a Republican who's won statewide in California in 20 years.
Tom.
I think there's something else too. It was very, very interesting is as you were rattling off those, and it's because you know them by heart, but I think they're really, for people listening, there needs to be kind of a more of an understanding here. There were 4 individuals that were in the top 4, including 2 Democrats, to be the replacement candidate. What you're talking about, the number 2 guy, Kevin Pafferth, was a Democrat. He was the guy with 9%. So there was people in California that wanted this Dem to replace Gavin Newsom. And when you're talking about 3.5 million votes, hats off to you for that. But when it came for the recall, you got 4.9 million votes. It was 38% in favor of the recall, and you were the recall candidate. So, and the other thing I looked at, I want to know what you thought about it. You just talked about that they put you with Trump and it was defeat Trumpism and all that. But they also kind of turned it into a mono-topic election. It was all about COVID. This is a matter of life and death was actually a COVID ad that they spent more airtime on than any of the other ads, even on the you and Trump. So they created this scare element. Is that how you read it?
That's part of it. They said that I was anti-vaccine, even though I've been double vaxxed.
You said you had been vaccinated.
Yeah, but I oppose mandates. I oppose the mask mandates. I oppose the vaccine mandates. I oppose the shutdown. So that translated into Elder is anti-vax. CNN interviewed me for about a half hour, and I told them that young people are not likely to get COVID. They're not likely to get really sick. They're not likely to be hospitalized. Not likely to die. But that's not true according to the CDC. Blah blah blah. Turns out, of course, I was right. Yeah. Nobody nobody apologized. The other thing, though, that happened in this one, as opposed to 2003, in 2003, the Democrat lieutenant governor ran on the replacement side as well. And that took a lot of the vote away from Gray Davis, the then incumbent. So they did not want to repeat that same mistake. There was some rumor that the 2-term former mayor of L.A., Antonio Villaraigosa, a Democrat, was going to run on the replacement side. And I heard that they made some sort of deal so he wouldn't do it. Had he been in that race, it would have been a different ballgame.
They paid his prior campaign debts was one of the rumors.
That's what I heard.
But by the way,
I wasn't going to repeat that. Thank you for doing that.
Do you regret getting back at this point?
That's BizDoc research. So if the BizDoc is wrong, it's not Larry.
Sue Tom, don't sue me.
Are you at this point? Do you regret getting vaxxed or no? You're fine with the decision you made.
If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have done it.
You wouldn't have.
My doctor told me I am over 65 years old. I'm 71. I know I look good. Black don't crack. the elder, the berry, the sweeter the juice. Yeah. Oh, he went there.
Yeah.
I'm over 65. I have high blood pressure and I have a rare blood condition. And so because of these comorbidities, as they're called, he strongly recommended that I get vaccinated. Looking back at it, I think that, and I did get COVID after getting vaccinated, I think I would have been just fine.
So okay, California. Why haven't you left yet? Why are you still in California?
This is where I'm from. My friends are there. My church is there. My memories are there. And frankly, if you live in California, you bought a home, say in the 80s, you're doing very, very well. Your house is appreciated like crazy. I got a lot of equity in my home, so I'm living quite well, as long as I avoid the homeless people and the needles. And
Yeah.
I'm serious about that. I live in a very nice place in Hollywood Hills. I could go maybe 2 or 3 blocks, and on either side of the street are a bunch of vans full of people who shouldn't
Hollywood
be living
Hills.
there. Yeah, Hollywood Hills. Shouldn't be living there. There's a real bad homeless problem in the area where I live. Antonio Villaraigosa, by the way, after the recall was over, said, "I've never seen L.A. look so dirty. I've never seen so much homelessness." He didn't say anything during the recall, but he said it afterwards. It's pretty pathetic, and the Bay Area is even worse.
What happened to it? I mean, for a guy that's been there your entire life, I lived there 24 years. Vinny lived there, I don't know how many
15 years?
Tom, you lived there how many years?
40.
40 years. So we're all California natives. He's a Florida guy. He's actually an Addison guy, Addison, Texas guy, born and raised in Addison, Texas.
Miami, but I love for Addison.
by way of Addison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a Jew.
That's trolling me.
The evolution of this great state that the California dreaming, right? Everybody, mamas and papas, everybody wanted to go to this place. What happened to it?
Single party government, Democrats. Democrats control the Assembly, the Senate. They have 2/3 majority. Republicans need not even show up for work. They pass one job-killing bill after another, one freedom-sapping bill after another. They're in bed with the teachers union. They're in bed with the environmentalists. And they've just passed one law after another that's undermining the middle class. Very wealthy people can survive. Very poor people can survive. It's the middle-class people who are leaving.
And Larry,
The average price of a home in California is 175% above the national average. Think about that. The number one reason that people cite for leaving is they cannot afford to buy a house. And they have no idea why. They just know they can't afford to buy one. That's why when people leave California and go to places like Colorado and Arizona, they start changing those states because they still vote Democrat because they haven't connected the dots.
Hold on, they still vote Democrat when they leave the state?
They haven't connected the dots. They don't know why. All they know is that things are not. I can't get the kind of lifestyle that I want. I can get a better lifestyle in this state, that state, that state, but they have no idea why.
So they're just attributing it to the cost of living.
Yeah,
That's it.
or whatever.
And how much is the average house in California compared to the national?
I think the average price of a home in California is about $800,000.
yep, 741.
Look at that.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
even see
insane.
that, and I did it already.
Yeah.
Nice.
Are you
By the way,
impressed? Are you impressed?
To back up what Larry's talking about, go take a look at the history of Colorado, Phoenix, and Austin. Excuse me, Denver, Phoenix, and Austin. It's exactly what he's talking about, where they move in and they turn red to lavender and then blue.
I figured it'd be the exact opposite. People leaving California being like, I can't take the restrictions, I can't take the taxes, I can't take the regulation, the homelessness, everything just combined. It's like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go live my life. I'm an independent thinker and move to a state where I can just do me. But you're basically saying, no, they're just going to continue their left-leaning policies, even in states
some
that
time
are
in Austin and Denver.
They have indoctrinated people in California to believe Republicans are just bad people.
Gotcha.
And anything Republican is bad. I mean, I'm pro-life, therefore I'm anti-woman. That's how they phrase it. I believe taxes are too high, therefore I'm for the rich. I mean, that's what they do, and they have indoctrinated a whole generation of people, young people in California, to feel that way.
Let me ask this question, Tom. This goes to you and to Larry. So, do you think we had teachers protesting against DeSantis here, and they're saying, Florida anti-woke agenda is causing us to want to leave the state of Florida, and some people in Florida are like, great, go to California, right?
Where you belong.
Yeah. So do you think more Democrats are leaving red states because they can no longer be there and they're finding blue states, or do you think more conservatives, Republicans are leaving blue states, finding red states to go to?
I think a little bit of both, but I think that surely the red states are the ones that are growing. You look at, there's a map that shows you where taxes are going, and they're going to red states. I think people feel the schools are better. There's less regulation, a lower cost of living, greater economic opportunity. So I think both Republicans and Democrats are leaving for those reasons. I just think that Democrats have not figured out that there is a reason why these things are causing you to leave.
I would agree with that. My independent research would say it's probably 7-3. 7 is the conservatives.
So Tom's a fact check guy. When you say something, is that what
No,
Tom's Mr. Wikipedia is what we call it.
But
It's very impressive. No, seriously.
Oh, well, thank you very much. My wife got out of college, Cal State Northridge, and she started teaching. So she was at LA Unified, which for other people is the largest school district in the United States, and it's actually too large to self-manage. And the teachers union there, very, very blue, but very, very upset. And these teachers have been leaving, and they've been going to Phoenix, and they've been going to Riverside even, and out to areas where they feel that they can that they can be a teacher with a better cost of living. And so my informal analysis of it is I'm seeing 8-2 or 7-3. To your question, I agree. It's a little bit of both.
And Tom, I mentioned Villaraigosa earlier, the former mayor of L.A. When he was running the first time, his wife is a teacher at LAUSD.
Mm-hmm.
And he was asked, why don't you have your own kids at LAUSD?
I remember this. And the wall in front of his house.
You're a big proponent of public schools. You oppose school choice. And he said, and I quote, I would never sacrifice my kid by putting my kid in an LAUSD school.
Wow.
But I'm running for mayor of this fine city.
And he did not win because of that comment.
Wow.
Well, at least he was being honest.
At least he's honest, yeah.
At least he's honest. At least he's not telling the... And by the way, it's so funny you're saying this. We're talking about California. I'm actually really curious. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because which one is outwardly blue, but internally they feel safer in a red state, right? Because think about it. Socialists feel safer in a capitalistic society, right? They don't want to leave this place. If you really feel safer being in a socialist society, go to a socialist country. Why stay in America? So I think more red is willing to leave blue, and I don't think blue leaves red. I think blue feels safer in red, while red doesn't feel safer in blue because they're not welcome.
I think you're making it more complicated than it is. I think it's just a lot of hypocrisy. For example, there was a study some years ago where government school teachers, that's a term I prefer instead of public school, government school teachers were asked, with school-age kids were asked where you put your own kids. Nationwide, 10% of us have our kids in private school, 6% of black families do. 49% of Philadelphia public school teachers with school-age kids had their own kids in private schools. 39% Chicago public school teachers with school-age kids put their own kids in private school. The head of the Chicago Teachers Union recently said that school choice was racist. Her own kid is in private school.
I have a question.
It's just hypocrisy.
Let me stay on this. By the way,
rank hypocrisy.
Stats came up just to Brandon and I were doing this video to see during COVID, top 10 highest tax states and the bottom lowest tax states. Okay, during COVID, the top 10 highest tax states lost $341 billion of AGI. Okay, tax revenue. The top 10 lost 341. Okay. Guess what the bottom 10 lowest tax states gained? $341 billion. Mm-hmm. Did you understand what just happened right there?
It's a swap.
It's a swap. It's like you moved $341 billion of money under management at Goldman to Morgan Stanley. That's exactly what happened. So COVID was a great case study for us to see what works, what doesn't work. My concern right now with a state like California, do you think how quickly do you think that California could flip? And if yes, what would be the reason for it to flip?
If I knew the answer to that, you'd be talking to me from Sacramento. I don't know. I liken the average voter in California to a drug addict. You got to hit rock bottom and start rethinking your votes. I've never been in favor of term limits. I'm now in favor of term limits for voters. If you vote Democrat 2 or 3 times, you lose your right to vote. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's funny.
I just thought that at some point, even left-wing voters in California would go, you know what, I got to go a different way. But they haven't. When I was running, the wife of a retired Motown record mogul, she's in her 80s, he's in his 80s, was murdered. He had armed security at his house. Some guy who shouldn't have been on the street, one of these lifelong criminals, broke into the house, shot and killed her. A UCLA graduate student was working at a high-end furniture store in an area of LA called Hancock Park where Maxine Waters has her mansion. She was stabbed to death by another homeless guy. And I thought maybe at this point, maybe some people on the left might rethink their assumptions, but they haven't.
And Larry, what do you think it is from like all those cities? Is it just the indoctrination is so strong? Like if you're living in Chicago, Baltimore, New York, San Francisco, and you're seeing everything, is it just like, listen, we're not going to admit that this is shit. We're going to stick with it because Democrats, they fall on the sword. They stay loyal to the party. And it's like, no, we're good.
I think it's that. It's indoctrination. It's that plus a belief Republicans are just bad people. We just can't. It's not that we disagree about abortion, about taxes, about spending. We are bad people, fundamentally bad people. They've convinced people that way.
Well, this goes back to something we talk about all the time, and that's, why do people vote? Do they vote for personality or do they vote for policy? I would argue that it's overwhelmingly about personality, right? So you could go the policy argument all you want, right? Taxes, regulation, but if you don't have a charismatic candidate on the left or on the right running it, like, you're never going to win. It's just not going to happen. People vote on personality.
I don't see it that way. I think people vote mostly on what they perceive to be their best interest. Often they're wrong about that, but they vote on what they perceive to be in their best interest.
I think we have to give the disclaimer. There's never been a more charismatic candidate than Joe Biden ever in the history of politics. Most
I feel like
charismatic candidate ever.
Charismatic, and I've never heard a president.
By the way, did you see can you pull up the clip of what happened to him 2 days ago, where even the lady is like, "Okay, we're done with the event. We got to wrap it up."
Yeah,
if you can play this, just a little awkward. Just play this clip right here if you could. This is a must-see TV.
Look at his eyes. His eyes can't even open him.
Tony Robbins, dude, got nothing on this man.
No.
This guy, when he speaks, crowds show up. Rob, isn't that the one? But Rob, that's the one. Just play that one.
There's a few. That's when he was saying that his campaign staff, he follows the orders of his campaign
Which one's
staff.
the one where the lady in the background says,
This is towards the end.
Oh, okay, I got you.
We talked about at the conference overall. We talked about stability. We talked about making sure that the third world,
What's he saying?
The Southern Hemisphere had access to changes, had access. It wasn't confrontational at all. He came up with
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Do you know how disrespectful it is to just interrupt the president?
Yeah. Well, I don't think the nursing home director had any choice but to speak up.
Laugh all you want. The student loan forgiveness thing was brilliant. He got a bunch of young people voting in the midterms who otherwise wouldn't have voted. The climate change stuff that young people are fascinated by, it's on his side. It's again about policy. And the hostility and hatred against Donald Trump, I've never seen anything quite like it. And so he has all that stuff going for him. Yeah, and he has the media.
People always wonder.
The guy sits up there and says, I've cut the deficit $1.7 billion. Even the Washington Post called it bottomless Pinocchios, meaning you repeat a lie so much it becomes propaganda. He says it and gets away with it.
You talked about hitting rock bottom, and I look for glimpses because, every now and then you see a glimpse in the populace about what they're doing. And I really thought I saw it in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania in 2016 when Trump was elected. Because Wisconsin and Michigan, if you want to talk about Rust Belt, you want to talk about what's going on there. Detroit, once upon a time, was Motor City, and yet they're making more pickup trucks in Canada than they were in Detroit.
Right.
So much had happened in Michigan. It was such. This is even before what's her name? Whitmer lost her mind during COVID. But you look at what the voter did, and I really thought, is there a rock bottom moment finally coming to Michigan? And Detroit voted pretty blue, but not as blue as it had been, and that actually the state went to Trump. And Wisconsin a little less so because the governor Scott Walker had done a pretty good job there. But I thought I saw some glimpses there. Do you see glimpses out there where you say, "Wow, there's a little something. Maybe something's turning. Maybe somebody's rock bottom"?
I wish I could say that, but honestly, 7 million illegal aliens are now in the country who were not here until Biden comes in. We've caught hundreds on the terror watch list. Lord knows how many got away with it. Inflation hasn't been this high in 40 years. Interest rates now 7%. Haven't been this high in years. People are paying $500 to $700 a month more for the same goods and services they were paying 3 years ago. What does it take? What does it take? I thought the economy is stupid. Isn't that what Bill Clinton said? The economy is stupid?
Yeah.
What does it take? Who is better off now than they were 3 years ago? Raise your hand. Nobody is. Nobody is.
Gas is down, eggs are down, but my groceries stayed up.
show the hypothetical race between Trump and Biden to be within the margin of error. Yeah. Honestly.
Well, that's
what does
always,
it take? What does it take?
Yeah. But here's the question, though, Larry. How much is attributed to Biden versus just this is the aftermath of COVID? Because if COVID never happened, we wouldn't have this high of interest rates.
Right.
Inflation wouldn't be going up.
Trump would have been reelected.
I agree.
Yeah.
I fully agree. So I fully, every stat you just said is absolutely correct.
Right.
Inflation, housing, but the vast majority of it is due to COVID. Wouldn't you agree?
All I'm saying is the average voter, in my opinion, should be looking at Joe Biden and go, WTF. I'm paying all of this. I'm paying 40% more for gasoline prices. There are 7 million people in the country illegally. Lord knows how many of them are terrorists. That, to me, ought to be enough. Mm-hmm. It isn't. And I don't know what that is. I think it's the hostility against Republicans in general and Donald Trump in particular.
And how brilliant is the left at demonizing him so much that it's like, we don't care. We don't give a damn about all the problems that you just mentioned. At least it's not that orange Hitler guy.
And
That's their attitude.
this two-tiered system of justice ought to be upsetting everybody.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future?
I'm cautiously pessimistic. How's that? I'm worried, quite worried. I mean, look at this two-tiered system of justice. You got Donald Trump. Let's just take the January 6th indictment. He's being indicted because essentially his lawyers made the argument that the vice president has more than ceremonial duties on the first week following an election. The same argument Democrats made after 2000 when they tried to decertify Florida. Same argument Democrats made after 2004 when they tried to decertify Ohio. There were 30 House Democrats plus Barbara Boxer, including Benny Thompson, the chair of the January 6th Insurrection Committee, all joining to decertify Ohio because they argued that the Debo voting machine had been tampered with. Where have we heard that before? 2016, they challenged more states than Donald Trump did after 2020. Nobody accused them of being election deniers. Nobody prosecuted them, and their lawyers were not facing disbarment. This is just madness. And it seems to me, where's the ACLU when you need them? Where's the left? And this Hunter Biden, Joe Biden stuff, Woodward Bernstein, I'm young enough to remember that in the 70s, they went nuts over Richard Nixon, and Nixon didn't do it for greed. He was trying to cover up the break-in of Watergate because he had a bunch of his aides who got involved in that.
And Daniel Ellsberg, psychiatrist.
Right.
Minor things. These weren't huge.
And Woodward, it's still there. He's still at the Washington Post. He's an executive there, and Carl Bernstein is still around. Where are these guys? Nobody seems to care. I'm blown away where the country is right now. I really am. Half the country believes the other half is evil.
You're absolutely right. And young people, when I say young people, if you're in college right now, you probably don't remember the 2000 election because that's 23 years ago. So if you're a 22-year-old college student right now, you probably don't even remember 2000. Gore pushed that case to the U.S. Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. So you want to talk about election denier. It took us, was it 12 or 13 weeks to actually like determine the election, and it had to get to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it wasn't Bush pushing that.
And Tom, talk about election denying. Hilary referred to Donald Trump for the entirety of his presidency as illegitimate, her word, not mine. Said the election was stolen, her word, not mine. Jay Johnson is Obama's DHS secretary, testified under oath that while the Russians tried, they failed to change a single vote tally in 2016. 2/3 of Democrats believe, according to a YouGov poll, that the Russians, quote, changed vote tallies, close quote, to elect Donald Trump. Zero evidence to change any. A greater percentage of Democrats believe 2016 was stolen than we feel that way about 2020. Nobody calls them election deniers.
Yeah. And
it's such a double standard.
Yeah, and all Hillary and the DNC got was like $170,000 slap on the wrist for the whole Russian collusion dossier.
Hillary and the DNC paid for the Steele dossier, and the FEC fined them because they characterized it as a legal expense. Exactly. Donald Trump characterized the Stormy Daniels thing as a legal expense. He's facing criminal charges by the Manhattan DA. Yeah. It's outrageous.
What do you think is going to end up happening to Trump?
Nothing.
Okay. So
I think he's going to get. I think he's probably going to get nominated. If he gets nominated, he'll get elected, and he'll pardon himself.
But wait a minute. You also said that Larry Elder on Trump. You said this a few months ago. I'm not sure he's electable. You said he's nominatable, but he's not electable. So your position's changed in 3 months.
I feel more strongly now that he can win because of what they've done to him with all these indictments.
So it's changed in 3 months.
I just feel more strongly. Look, he was a great president. The economy was rocking and rolling. The borders has never been more secure. We got all the judges that we wanted up there. Built the wall. We're oil and gas independent. He was a great president, and he'll hopefully put those policies back into place when he comes back. Yeah, I feel more strongly now than I did before.
How will he pivot to the center? You know, I think Nixon was famously said that, you know, you run to the right and then you pivot to the center. Same with the Democrats, you run to the left.
Right.
So I fully agree that Trump is going to be the nominee. And I also, despite popular opinion, I think Sleepy Joe is also going to be the guy. I think we're going to see what happens during that debate.
I think he will be the guy. If he can fog up a mirror, he'll be the guy. And if he's not, it'll be Kamala Harris.
So when, oh, God forbid.
No. I mean, I don't know why people feel that somehow somebody else is going to sneak in like that. Even Gavin Newsom just the other day said, I'm not going to run in 2024. Kamala Harris is next in line. And I've been saying that for months. He played coy because, look, the strongest part of the Democratic base are black voters. And even more strong are black female voters. And they love Kamala Harris. And they feel that when we make fun of her cackle, it's both sexist and racist. They feel that Joe Biden's given her thankless tasks like getting to the bottom of illegal immigration. They feel she's been mistreated. And if she is perceived as having been drop-kicked for a white dude like Gavin Newsom or Mayor Pete, black women won't vote Republican. They just won't vote, thereby guaranteeing whoever our nominee is, he or she will win. So they can't afford to do that. And Gavin Newsom knows that. That's why he never announced.
But let's stay on Trump because I think Kamala is a non-factor. But that's my opinion. I know what you just said. But
how can she be a non-factor if Joe Biden can't? If Joe Biden can get across the finish line, as soon as he gets across the finish line, he hands over the baton to her, and she could run.
I just don't think she's electable. But I want to stay on Trump if you don't mind. So when he's going to pivot to the center,
they're stuck with her. That's my point.
I don't think you understand what you understand what he's saying. Right?
I understand completely that.
He's saying he's going to win, then he's going to give it to her so she can stay for 8 years.
And one more.
Well,
that's
it's
what
not an anointment. Like it's going to be an election.
One more.
Totally. No, but what he's saying is Biden's going to win, then hand it over.
This is important about the gender and identity party, which is the Democratic Party.
Yeah, their DEI score is very high.
When Clyburn got behind Joe Biden
Carolina.
after Bernie Sanders won the Nevada caucuses,
yep.
For a few days he was a front runner. They were scared to death. He's a self-described Democrat socialist, and they knew he couldn't win.
Not controllable.
So James Clyburn gets off the sideline on the eve of the South Carolina primary, endorses Biden. They all fell in line. He extracted a promise from Biden that his first nominee would be a black female. His vice president, black female. For a time, it looked like Dianne Feinstein might not finish out her term in California, and Gavin Newsom publicly said, if she can't finish it out, I will nominate a black female. They're all about black. This is the year of the black female. And they got a black female now, next in line after Biden. If she's drop-kicked for a white person, black women will be livid, and they will not vote. They won't vote Republican. They just won't vote.
Well, I think a lot of black women are gonna be upset because I don't think Kamala's electable. But how will Trump pivot to the center and actually win the election? Because you just hit the nail on the head. As old and decrepit as Joe Biden is, with all the lingering issues with Trump, which I think are a lot of the media and the Justice Department basically doing this, how will he pivot to the center and win over independent voters or even moderate Democrats?
I think what he's going to do is not run with a female. I'm not quite sure who it'll be, but Kim Reynolds maybe of Iowa, or Kristi Noem of South Dakota. Or maybe even Carrie Lake, but it's going to be a female.
You think that's how he's going to pivot?
I can't think of anything else he can do. I mean, we all know what he's about. What can he say now? He can't reinvent himself. He is who he is. He is what he is. So I think what he can do though is nominate a female.
What about a strong black man like Larry Elder as the VP? Talk to me about that, Larry.
I've told people if my phone rings and Trump's on the other end, I won't let it go to voicemail.
I think your phone's ringing right now, Larry.
But he's not going to do that. That would not be the smart move. I can't bring California to him.
Yeah.
I'm not in a swing state, and he doesn't need to have another man. He needs to have a female. And unfortunately, that's the way politics works.
And Larry, not to go conspiracy theory, because Adam loves when I'm a coincidence theorist guy.
You know when they say I'm not going to go here, they're going right there.
Yeah, it's like when
they say it's not about the money. It's about the money.
Like when a cop says there's nothing to see here.
There's definitely something to see.
I signed a $300 million contract for 10 years, but it's not about the money.
Yeah. No. But Larry, because I mean, as you said with the left. With 2016, with Hilary from weaponizing the FBI and everything is against Trump, Adam made a good point that it's obvious he's the front runner. Do you think the left has anything up their sleeves? I'm just saying in the sense that we keep getting warned about pandemic tools coming from Fauci, from Biden. Everybody keeps saying, hey, they're warning us. They're testing out the new vaccine, this new variant to test. Do you think, because mind you, election year, Donald Trump is probably going down as one of the best statistic policy presidents ever. all of a sudden, in an election year, a couple months before, Larry, a virus comes out of a lab that we own, and they still have zero accountability because it's still racist.
It wasn't just that. Also, 51 former intelligence officials signed a letter saying that the Hunter Biden laptop story had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation, 2.5-year collusion thing, using COVID to change the rules in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Who knows what they're going to do?
Exactly. That's what I was going to ask.
But they're going to do something.
Something is up to something is happening to keep, because apparently the game plan of keeping Joe Biden in the basement works.
So here's my question for you. You don't sound optimistic. You said you're cautiously pessimistic, right? I'm not sure if the voices of any party to be cautiously pessimistic encourage that party to want to go above and beyond. It's kind of like it's halftime. You're down 3 touchdowns, and a coach comes in and says, guys, I'm pessimistic. We're going to lose today. It's going to be a pretty bad loss, and you're all going to be, embarrassed at the end of it. It's going to be terrible, and then boom. Patriots come out from down 28-3 against the Falcons, and they win the Super Bowl.
The Jets won last night without Aaron Rodgers.
But what I'm saying to you is, to say cautiously pessimistic and to sound like everything is bad, everything is ugly, everything is this, everything is that, great. Well, what solution do you have for the rich Republicans of the right, for the Christian conservatives, for the libertarians that are also not happy about what's going on, about the business owners, about the guys that have the money? What should be the solution long term?
Well, that's why
to fight against.
That's why I am running. I am running because I'm an America First guy. I believe that taxes are too high, regulation is too much. We need to secure the borders. We need to get back to energy independence. I was a very happy camper when Donald Trump was president, and we need to work real hard to make sure if he's a nominee, he gets back in. But I'm running because there are a number of issues that we are not talking enough about, if at all. And I've said this many times. The number one social issue in America that nobody's talking about is the epidemic of fatherlessness. Yep. It is particularly acute in the black community. 70% of black kids enter the world today without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 1965 when it was 25%. Now 25% of white kids enter the world today without a father in the home, married to the mother. Half of Hispanic kids do. It is far and away the number one social problem facing this country. And the numbers are clear. When you're raised without a dad, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. And the left isn't talking about it because they created the problem. Our side doesn't talk about it because if you're white, you're going to be called racist. If you're black, you'll be called Uncle Tom or the black face of white supremacy. But nobody's talking about it, including Donald Trump.
Okay.
And so, if I can get people talking about this, I will feel I've given back to my country and given back to my party.
I got a follow-up question for you on that.
Okay.
Continue if you have other things you want to say.
Just one more thing. When I was trying to make this case on Charlemagne, and of course they were not having it. Here's the deal. According to the CDC, a young black man aged 10 to 43 is 13 times more likely to be murdered than a white male, same demo. Blacks account for 60% of the shootings, robberies, and the homicides in America. A young white man, 19 and under, the number one cause of preventable death for a young white man in that demo is accidents, like car accidents or drownings or drug overdoses. The number one cause of preventable death for a 19-year-old black male and under is homicide, almost always committed by another young black male. Now, if it isn't fatherlessness, please tell me, unless you're prepared to say black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime, tell me what it is. And almost nobody on the left, when I propose that question, has an answer for it.
Okay, so 2 questions on that.
Mm-hmm.
One, let's do the fatherless. A lot of my friends who are conservative, you're a hero to them. We're from California, so people love you, admire you, adore you, and hate you. From the other side, they hate you. Obviously, you saw what the LA Times article called you the what? What did they call you?
Blackface
of white supremacy. Robert, you can kind of pull up this LA Times article. But then I saw
Erica D. Smith are her initials. Oops.
Yeah, and then I saw the article, one that said, I think you were married in 92 and then divorced in 94, and the story is she wanted to have kids, you didn't want to have kids.
Right.
And you've never had kids. Right. Why a man with your kind of values, your passion for America, your conservative values, why didn't you have kids?
At the time, I didn't want them. One of my regrets in life is that I should have. Now I'm 71 and think it's too late. But at the time I didn't. I mean, I was 25 years old at one time. I'm not that age anymore. And when I was younger, I think what happened is when I was younger, I really intensely disliked my father. I've written a book about it called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. My father used to spank us really hard with a belt. My brothers and I both disliked him. And now I'm 25 years old, and I sat down and had a conversation with my dad, not having really spoken to him for almost 10 years. And I told him how much I disliked him when I was growing up, how mean I thought he was, how angry I thought he was for silly reasons. And my dad and I had a conversation I thought was going to last for 5 or 10 minutes. It ended up lasting for 8 hours.
Wow.
And during that 8-hour conversation, I found out that my father never knew his biological father. My last name, Elder, is not the name of his biological father. And I said, I'm 25 years old now. I said, well, Dad, who was your father? He says, I have no idea. You never met your dad? No. Who is Elder? Elder was the name of a guy who was in my life the longest. He was an alcoholic who used to beat up my mother, and when I tried to stop him, he'd beat me up. My dad said, then I came home at the age of 13, and I started quarreling with my mom's then boyfriend. Elder was long gone. And the mother sided with the boyfriend and threw my father out of the house, never to return. 13-year-old black boy, Athens, Georgia, Jim Crow South at the beginning of the Great Depression. For the next 8 hours, my dad just told me about his life. He became a Pullman porter in the trains. That's how he ended up in California. This is before the war, before the Second World War. My dad was blown away. You could walk through the front door of a restaurant in California, in LA, and get served. He always had crackers and 10 cans of tuna because he never knew in the South if he'd be able to get a meal. So my dad made a mental note, maybe someday I'll relocate to California. Pearl Harbor, my dad joined the Marines. I asked him why. If there are any Marines out there, I'm going to say 2 reasons. They go where the action is, and my dad said, I love the uniforms. So he's stationed on Guam, and when the war is over, he goes to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he met and married my mom to get him a job as a cook. My dad was in charge of cooking for the colored soldiers. And he was told, we don't hire niggers. He goes to an unemployment office. Lady says, you went to the wrong door. My dad goes out, sees colored only, goes to that door to the very same lady who sent him out. My dad came home with my mom and said, this is BS. I'm going to L.A., get me a job as a cook, and I'll send for you. So he goes to L.A. He walks around, and he's told, you don't have any references. My dad said, I need references to make ham and eggs. And my dad offered to work for free for a reference. They wouldn't even do that. So they treated him the same way in L.A. as they did in Chattanooga, maybe a little more polite. He goes to an unemployment office, this time just one door. Lady says, I have nothing. My dad says, what time do you open? She says, 9. What time do you close? She says, 5. My dad said, I'll be sitting in that chair. Do you have something? My dad sat in a chair for a whole day, came back the next day, sat there for half a day. She calls him up. I have something. I don't know if you're going to want it. My dad said, of course I'm going to want it. I'm starting a family. What is it? And she said, it's a job cleaning toilets at Nabisco brand bread. My dad did that for over 10 years, took a second full-time job cleaning at another bread company, cleaning toilets, cooked for a family on the weekend because he wanted my mom to be a stay-at-home mom. And he went to night school to get his GED. And then when he got his GED, he went to night school to learn how to operate a small restaurant. The man never slept. Wow. 5 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes here, half hour here. Not day after day, not week after week, not month after month, but year after year, which was why he was so grouchy. So as my dad is telling me this, my dad's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And now I'm crying. And I apologized to my father for having such a harsh view towards him. And he said, there's nothing to apologize for. You just didn't know. My father said, just follow the advice I've always given you and your brothers. Hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. Larry, you cannot control the outcome, but you are 100% in control of the effort. And before you moan or groan about what someone did to you or said to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and say to yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, my dad said this, no matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad things are going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. I was 25 years old when I had that conversation with him. For the next 35 years, he and I were the best of friends. I wrote a book called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours, about that 8-hour conversation. And it's changed people's lives. I get letters all over the world from people telling me that it changed that. So ingrained in me was I never wanted to have a child that felt the way I felt about my dad. And it was just in me. And it took a while for that to go away. By the way, my brothers both married women who had kids. And they both wanted to have kids. And I had the opposite reaction to my dad, as my brothers did. Let me tell you something real quickly about my mom. My mom was born on a farm in Huntsville, Alabama. And my mom was a lifelong Democrat. My dad was a lifelong Republican. And you should have been a fly on the wall to hear some of the arguments. But nobody called anybody a fascist. Nobody called anybody a Nazi. Nobody said you only care about the rich, you don't care about the poor. They were able to argue aggressively, passionately, but nobody demeaned anybody. And why we can't do that in this country, to me, is a real problem. And when I become president, I think I'm going to be able to change the tone of America so we can have discussions like this, like we're having here, civilly, without anybody calling anybody a fascist or a Nazi. My mother told my brothers and me, nobody can make you feel inferior without your permission. And so one day I'm in high school and I'm taking a course called African American Studies. If you know me, you've never heard me use the term African American to describe myself. I don't. I'm an American who's black. I don't like the term African American. The name of the course was African American Studies, so I'm just telling you what the name of the course was. So we read a poem by a guy named County Cullen. And it goes like this. While riding through old Baltimore, so small and full of glee, I saw a young Baltimorean keep a looking straight at me. Now, I was young and very small, and he was no whit bigger, and so I smiled, but he poked out his tongue and called me nigger. I saw the whole of Baltimore from May until September. Of all the things that happened there, that's all that I remember. Teacher was pissed. My class was all black. She talked about how this was going to make the kid always feel inferior. He was going to always have a permanent stain in his psyche. He'll never feel part of the American family. She was pissed. The class was pissed. I was pissed. So I'm walking home, and I knew my mom was going to have a different reaction to the poem, although I didn't know what it was going to be. So I walk into the house, and she's frying chicken wings, my favorite, and stirring a big pot of greens on the stove. I said, Mom, we read a poem in class. I want to get your reaction to it. She said, what is it? I said, it goes like this. While riding through old Baltimore, so small and full of glee, I saw a young Baltimorean keep a looking straight at me. Now, I was young and very small, and he was no whit bigger, and so I smiled. But he poked out his tongue and called me nigger. I saw the whole of Baltimore from May until September. Of all the things that happened there, that's all that I remember. My mom took the spoon out of the pot, hit it on the side, and said, Larry, what a darn shame he allowed something like that to spoil his vacation. How many wings do you want? And that's
God, and your mom's a Democrat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But she was a Kennedy-type Democrat. My mom, by the way, because of me, began voting Republican. She voted for George W. Bush twice. And her position was the Democratic Party left me. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. She never changed her registration. My mom was a pro-gun person, Second Amendment person. She grew up with guns. She was pro-life. My dad was pro-life. My mom, strong national security. And she thought Democrats just became just crazy. So I think that's how Robert Kennedy feels, I think, about his party as well right now, Robert Kennedy Jr.
Larry, you just went straight to Robert Kennedy, but man, what you just said the last 5-10 minutes now explains. There's a lot of men that, and I'd be curious to know what you would say to this. You said you're 70 or 71?
71.
Okay, so you're April 27th. When's your birthday?
That's right, April 27th.
Yeah. So you're 71. Of course. You haven't had kids. You wish you would have had kids, and I respect you for saying it now because that's where wisdom. We can borrow wisdom from somebody like you who's got a few decades on us. What do you say to men who are in their 20s, late 20s, career guys, or 30s or 40s who are like, you know what? I also don't want to have kids. I also don't want to have kids because it's too much responsibility. I don't have a good father figure. I don't have a good relationship with them. What do you say to them?
You're going to regret it. That's what I'd say to them. I have friends now, peers, who have kids and they've got grandkids. And I've never seen a man more joyful than when he's with his grandkids. And I don't have grandkids. I don't have kids. I think you're missing out.
What about women?
However, it isn't for everybody. My girlfriend never wanted to have kids. When I first met her, I thought she was saying it because she thought that's what I wanted her to say. One of my close friends is Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager has often argued that you are not a fully developed human being until you've had kids, until you've had that experience. And I've been on the same station with Dennis Prager for years. And every year he'd have his dad come in from New York, and his dad would talk about various things. And one time, Dennis gets up to use the restroom. This is during a break, and Mr. Prager is there with me, Dennis's dad. And I said, Mr. Prager, Dennis says that if you don't have kids, you're not fully formed as an adult. Because it always bothered me since I didn't have kids. And Mr. Prager said, I don't feel that way at all. I feel that you can just observe other people and have your own life experiences from other people. There's no reason why you have to have kids if you don't want to have kids. It's ridiculous to say that you would not be a fully so I told Dennis later on when his dad left what his dad said. So
Typical father,
Yeah.
you know. I remember one time Dudley, Shepherd of the Hills, you know who Dudley Rutherford is, the pastor from L.A. I used to have a radio show with KRLA called Saving America. I used to be right next to Prager, so in Glendale, on that New York Life, right next to the New York Life building.
Right.
But Dudley used to bring his father, and his dad would always undermine what Dudley would say. It was so funny. He said, look, my son doesn't know what he's talking about. Here's how this works.
Right.
And it was an interesting dynamic father-son relationship. Let's continue. Let's continue on this, issue with presidential issues you're running on. I did not see you at Milwaukee. We were at the debate.
Yeah.
And I know you're talking about...
I was in Milwaukee.
You were in Milwaukee.
I was in the city of Milwaukee. I was not at the debate because the RNC at the last minute shafted me. I mean, I met all the debate criteria, 40,000 individual donors.
You and Suarez, I believe.
Suarez, I don't know about his situation.
Right.
I just know about mine. I hit the 40,000 individual donors. 200 had to come from 20 different states. We had 200 from 37 different states. I had to submit 3 polls where I was at 1% or better. I did that. I get a phone call from Ronna McDaniel, the chair of the GOP, and David Bossie, the debate czar, and they tell me I'm not eligible for the debate because one of the polls I submitted is not going to be used. I said, which one? Rasmussen. Why? It's affiliated with the Trump campaign. I said, well, assuming that's true, why is that my problem? And they said any poll affiliated with any candidate can't be used by any other candidate. Rasmussen then put out a statement and said Trump is not affiliated with our campaign, with our poll. It had nothing to do with our poll. There's no reason why Elder can't use it. So even if I had picked up the phone and called Rasmussen before I submitted the poll and said, by the way, are you affiliated with Trump? They would have said no. Then I submitted a 4th poll, and Ronna McDaniel said you submitted it too late. Well, it's true. I submitted it after their deadline. One, I didn't know I needed to submit another one, but more importantly, they finished their polling before the deadline. They didn't release the results until after the deadline, but they finished the polling before the deadline. So there was enough wiggle room where, in my opinion, had they wanted me up there, they could have allowed me up there. My lawyer is the former chair of the Federal Election Commission, and he argues that because the RNC failed to apply the criteria fairly to Elder, what they did, in effect, was give an in-kind contribution to the 8 people who were up there on that debate stage. And the value of that in-kind contribution, based on how much Fox charges for a spot, is almost $100 million. And if you don't put Elder up there, we gave them until 2 o'clock on the debate day to change their mind. We're going to file a complaint with the FEC. Well, 2 o'clock came and went, and we've now filed that complaint. Now the next step is to get on the debate stage on the 27th of this month in
Reagan Library,
the Reagan
Simi Valley.
Library.
Yeah.
3% in 3 different polls, plus 50,000 individual donors. As for the 50,000 individual donors, that's not going to be a problem, but the 3% is. And 2 days ago, we launched a $500,000 ad campaign to try and get my numbers up.
I saw that.
So it's going to be a coin toss.
Larry, out of I'm pretty sure you saw it, that the first debate. If you had to choose, if you weren't even in the race,
Right.
if you had to pick out of all of them, I'm pretty sure you saw, who would you put at the top?
Who won?
Who won that night?
Donald Trump. I'm serious.
Still.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
By not going, that was smart not to go. I thought, and I felt this way when I ran for governor. I did not say a single negative thing about any of my Republican rivals, not one time. I shot right to the top, and it wasn't because I was a front runner. I didn't expect that, but I was. I felt that the target was Gavin Newsom. Remember, it was a 2-part deal. The first part is, do you want this man recalled? It doesn't matter what happens on the second part if he isn't recalled. And every single time somebody said, what do you think about John Cox? John Cox was the guy that ran against Gavin Newsom the first time, and he also ran as a replacement candidate. I said, it's not about John Cox. It's about what Gavin Newsom did by shutting down California in a more severe way than anybody else. It's about people leaving California for the very first time in 170 years. It's about crime. It's about homelessness. It's about the awful school budget. It's about how bad our schools are doing. It's about the fact that we have an underfunded pension liability of $1.5 trillion in California. If the others had said that, instead of saying, well, Elder's this, Elder's that, Elder's that, I think the first part might have passed. So I feel the same way about this debate. We ought to all come together, meaning Republicans, and make sure that Biden doesn't get 4 more years. The idea that we can't at least agree not to call Donald Trump an insurrectionist, as one of them did up there, you got to be kidding me. We can't agree on the borders, on crime, on this defund the police nonsense. We ought to be talking about that. And the fact that Republicans were taking shots at each other meant, in my opinion, that Donald Trump won.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and calling the insurrections. I don't know if you guys saw yesterday, Kamala Harris did a speech about 9/11, and she compared January 6th to Pearl Harbor and 9/11.
It's despicable.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
The second debate that Trump may or may not go to, A, do you think he should go? And B, why do you think that even the DeSantis's, certainly the Pences of the world, the Christies of the world, even Nikki Haley, are not going to coalesce around Trump?
You know, I'd be the biggest hypocrite in the world if I were to tell Donald Trump he should go to the second debate or even the first one. I didn't go to any of my debates when I was running for governor. They had about a half a dozen of them. And I said the same thing I just said to you. I said there's no point in us getting into a circular firing squad and giving Gavin Newsom video he's going to use against whoever it is who's the front runner. And that's exactly what in my opinion, happened. Look, Chris Christie is probably the only one up there that I think I feel that any of the 8 people up there is a better president than Joe Biden, with the exception of Chris Christie. The fact that he's referred to Donald Trump as an insurrectionist and can't understand that what's happening to our country with this 2-tier system of justice is much more important than your hostility towards Donald Trump. I don't understand that.
What are your thoughts on Vivek? I know that you've said high praise about him. You also said that he stole a line from you about the number one problem.
He did.
What are his chances?
Look, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is Donald Trump. He's not going anywhere. You know, unless he has a health problem or something like that, I can't imagine that he's not going to get the nomination right now. I have a problem with anybody who stands up there and says, quote, "I'm the only one up here who's not bought and paid for," close quote, which is what he said, Vivek said. Really? Tim Scott's bought and paid for? Really? 37 years old, never run for office before. You're the only one who's not bought and paid for. I thought that was a bit much. Regarding him stealing my line, here's the backstory. On one of our, we've been in Iowa, New Hampshire many times. I've seen him speak many times. He heard me speak many times. He's never once referred to the epidemic of fatherlessness. So right before the first debate, he comes up to me at one of our events, I forget where, and he said, can I talk to you privately? I said, sure, step into my office. We went over to the side a little bit. And he said, if you don't make the debate, will you endorse me? And I said, I cannot promise that. I can tell you this. If I don't make the debate, say something to the effect of, my friend Larry Elder can't be up here. However, he has brought to the forefront the issue of the epidemic of fatherlessness, and I salute him for having done that. As you know, he said part of that, but did not give me any attribution. I'm okay with the fact that he's raised the issue. That's much more important than getting attribution, but he did say he was going to do that and then didn't do it. By the way, for decades, I have been saying we've got a country to save. Guess who said that during the debate? Nikki Haley. Quote, we've got a country to save. Just saying.
So it sounds like you're going to be sort of the president whisperer at this point.
So I was there in spirit, if not in body.
What is this, Rob?
This is a clip of Larry talking about the fatherless epidemic.
Go ahead and play that. Play that.
Epidemic of fatherlessness. So part of the problem is we also have a federal government that pays single women more not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house, contributing to an epidemic of fatherlessness.
Larry, you might have to just do the voiceover for us.
Yeah, I was
Rob, what's this?
This is the GOP Lincoln.
That's all. Look, I think Vivek is.
All of us spoken.
I think Vivek is an absolute stud, but this isn't the first time he's been accused of stealing lines. His first line was, I'm a skinny little kid with a funny last name. He took that from Obama.
Yeah.
But they say like we stand on the shoulders of giants. Can it just be seen as look, I'm just using what works?
Right.
And can you blame him?
Somebody once said originality is the art of concealing your source. So, and Joe Biden, as you know, he had at least 1 or 2 campaigns go supernova because he stole from other people, didn't give them attribution.
Well, even Donald Trump took "Make America Great Again" from Ronald
Reagan, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of these things are just duplicatable.
Yeah. You're right.
Okay. We'll agree to agree then.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on RFK? What are your thoughts on RFK?
I think he's got some interesting ideas. I mean, he's not your typical Democrat, but he is a Democrat. He is. I've not heard him say anything about taxes being too high, regulations being too high. I've never heard him say anything about we should be rolling back this march towards single payer on health care. So he's still a Democrat, although he's a much more rational one than some of the others. He was opposed to the lockdowns. He said that he doesn't believe any additional gun control law will do anything about gun violence, although he does support an assault weapons ban. So he's a little more rational than the average Democrat, but he's still a Democrat.
He's still a Democrat.
Still a Democrat.
And you saw what they did with New Hampshire. Pretty much there's nothing he can do to be nominated, to win, anything. They pretty much locked him out. So if that's the case, why is he still campaigning?
You have to ask him. I mean, people run for different reasons. I mean, I'm realistic about my opportunity to become president. I think that it's a long shot, but I'm running for the issues I mentioned, to talk about homelessness, fatherlessness rather, and the lie that America's systemically racist, that's getting people killed. And I don't think our side, by the way, effectively deals with that well enough. It's not just driving nonsense like reparations. I mentioned that, which I consider to be the extraction of money from people who were never slave owners to be given to people who were never slaves. It's driving stuff like race-based preferences and DEI. It's getting people killed. It's called the Ferguson effect or the George Floyd effect, and that's a phenomenon of cops pulling back all over America for fear of being accused of systemic racism. As a result, in city after city after city, there are lots of people who are dead who otherwise wouldn't be dead if the police were doing their normal proactive policing. And I don't think that our side, meaning Republican side, is calling enough attention to the damage done by this lie. Look at the George Floyd riots or the Black Lives Matter riots that took place in protests in May of 2020 that lasted 4 months. The most deadly protest in the history of America. 35 people killed, 2,000 police officers injured, about $2 billion in property damage, insured property damage, maybe another $1 billion or $2 billion in uninsured property damage, all because of an assumption, a narrative that what happened to George Floyd had to do with his race. Now, the thing was televised, remember? And the lead prosecutor was a black man, and he never once said that what happened to George Floyd had anything to do with his race. In fact, in his opening statement, he took pains to say the police in general were not on trial. The Minneapolis PD in general was not on trial. In fact, he praised them. He said this individual cop, Derek Chauvin, is on trial for what he did or didn't do to George Floyd. Yet all these people in the streets on the assumption that what happened to George Floyd had to do with his race. Now, I think if you were to ask most of the people, there were 200 cities that had protests, millions of people in the streets. I think if you were to ask most of these people to describe their political ideology, most of them would probably say that I'm either very liberal or liberal. There's a website called policemag.com. This is important. People who were self-described as very liberal were asked, how many unarmed black men did the police kill in 2019? One half of the self-described very liberal people, 50% of them, thought the police killed 1,000 unarmed black men in 2019. 8% thought they killed 10,000.
What?
Of those who were self-described as liberal, 39% thought they killed 1,000. 5% thought they killed 10,000. According to the Washington Post database, it was 12. That's the gap between what people think is going on versus what is going on. That's what happens to your mentality.
To be fair, not 12,000 or 1,200, 12.
12. Washington Post database. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the police kill more unarmed white people every year than they kill unarmed blacks. And there are video of the police mishandling, manhandling, mistreating unarmed white people. Nobody cares. I urge people to Google Kelly Thomas, Fullerton, California, a few years ago. Literally, there's 3 or 4 cops beating up this homeless guy. 2 of them were tried, found not guilty. One had charges dismissed against him. Almost 9-10 minutes of video, almost as long as George Floyd. There's another one called Tony Timpa, T-I-M-P like Paul A, Dallas, Texas. Homeless guy, mentally ill. Cops beat him up. I can't breathe. He said all that. Maybe 13 minutes of video. Dallas, Texas, white guy. Nobody cares. And my point is giving you the false impression that the police are killing unarmed black people when in fact it is rare for the police to kill anybody, let alone an unarmed black person. And by the way, unarmed does not mean not dangerous. Michael Brown was unarmed, but his DNA was found on the officer's gun. He had done a strong arm robbery just minutes earlier. So just because you're unarmed doesn't mean you're not perceived as dangerous. But it's rare for the police to kill anybody, let alone an unarmed black person. Mm-hmm. But the people in the streets, as I said, from these numbers, have no blooming idea how infrequent this is.
The closest comparison I can make to it is the following, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. So why does one story get more momentum than the other one? Why does the one story blacks experiencing that versus white kids more
advances the narrative? I'll give you a recent example here in Florida. The Jacksonville racists killed those 3 black guys here in Florida. And Joe Biden made a comment, and not only did he make a comment, he said, silence in the face of hate like this is complicit. You're being complicit. About 3 months ago, Tulsa, Oklahoma, black guy gets a gun. If you are hearing this for the first time, this is my point. Black guy gets a gun, walks up to a white guy, pulls out the gun, shoots him in the back of the head and kills him. Goes to another area of Tulsa, Oklahoma, sees another white guy, pulls out the gun, shoots him in the back of the head and kills him. Admits he did it because they were white. Biden didn't say a damn thing. He didn't say a damn thing about that because it doesn't advance the agenda. And by the way, most homicide is same-race homicide. Most whites who are killed by other whites. Most blacks who are killed by other blacks. However, every year there are a handful of black-white homicides. Out of the, say, 20,000 homicides, about 750 of them are black, white, black. 500 white people are killed by blacks, even though blacks are just 13% of the population. 250 blacks are killed by whites, even though whites are 60% of the population. So blacks are killing twice as many whites as the other way around. Most people have no idea about that stat. I'll give you another one. Forget about homicides. This is violent crime between blacks and whites other than homicide. Attempted murder, rape, assault with a weapon. Roughly 500,000 such instances every single year. 85 to 90% is a black per white victim, only 10% to 15% the other way around. Most people aren't aware of that. Now, if some white guy, white Republican said, we have an epidemic of black supremacy in America, as Biden said about white supremacy at Howard. If a white guy said that, we would probably call him a race-hustling demagogue, and he'd be denounced. But Biden can go to Howard University and tell these graduating students just a few months ago, the number one problem facing the homeland is white supremacy, and nobody says a damn thing. He is being every bit a race-hustling demagogue as Al Sharpton, but nobody said a word.
Why?
I think it's Republicans, nothing scares Republican more than a left-wing person calling him or her a racist. They run from that, which is one of the reasons I believe the Democratic Party or the Republican Party never really cared that much about me being on the debate stage. I say this kind of stuff makes them feel uncomfortable. Republicans are trying to reach out to black voters, and they fear if they talk about fatherlessness that black women will perceive them as being demeaned, that somehow you're undermining the hard work that black females by themselves are doing raising these kids. You're not doing anything of the kind, but I think Republicans are afraid the reaction will be the same way. If Republicans start talking about the kind of stuff racially that I'm talking about, the fact that black people kill more white people than the other way around, I think they feel that the media and the left will jump all over them. It's no fun being called an Uncle Tom. It's no fun being called the blackface of white supremacy. And for a white person to be called a racist, that's no fun either. So they'd rather not talk about it.
Do you think it's still Democrats against Republicans, Republicans against Democrats, or do you think it's establishment versus anti-establishment? Meaning, do you think that distinction has been made to the American voter to say, look, you're either voting for a establishment Republican candidate, you're voting for an establishment Democratic candidate, or you're voting for an anti-establishment Democratic candidate or anti-establishment Republican candidate?
I guess I don't see it that way at all. I think the divide in this country is between the left, wokeism, the perception that America is still a country of racism, of sexism, of homophobia, and those who believe in hard work, accountability, and personal responsibility. That, to me, is the divide. Democrats, Hollywood, media, academia, big tech, they're all on one side, and people that are hardworking, they just want to get by and want government off their backs are on the other side. I was watching a debate one time between Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chair of the DNC, and Ryan Priebus, the chair of the RNC. And this is a live debate, so I was texting Ryan Priebus. He didn't see my text, didn't respond to it. But Debbie Wasserman Schultz said, I want to know that my party has my back. And I texted him and I said, I want to know which party will get government off my back. And I think that's the divide.
But okay, so then, there are people that want to have government control you from both sides, though, left and right. So this is why what I'm trying to say is, you ever read the book Blue Ocean Strategy or no? Okay, so Blue Ocean Strategy is a book about how to not directly compete against your competition. I think Republicans are completely missing the mark. They all sound the same, and they're all screwing it up, in my opinion. I could be completely wrong, but this book talks about you got to increase, decrease, eliminate, create. So you got to increase a little bit of something. You got to decrease a little bit of something. You got to eliminate something that everybody's doing, or you got to create something new. So, for example, Yellowtail is a wine company that was directly competing against other wine companies that were getting destroyed. Blue Ocean idea comes out. Yellowtail says, instead of competing against wine drinkers, we are cheap wine. We're not going to beat these guys. Yellowtail goes and competes against beer drinkers to get Yellowtail to be sold at bars, et cetera, et cetera. Yellowtail goes from selling, I don't know, how many cases per year to 48 million cases per year.
Australian success story.
Yeah, and they blow up, and they become a whole different company. So when you're in the red ocean, everyone's stealing from each other, stealing votes from each other, stealing all this stuff from each other, versus like, go to blue ocean, there's no other sharks there, have your own market. Republicans keep fighting the same fight, and they keep getting their asses handed to them. It's the same thing. The way they're presenting the argument is it's Democrats against Republicans, it's this, that, versus, no, it's the people that want to make decisions for you, the establishment versus the anti-establishment.
I have difficulty accepting the premise. This is not a product. This is not a
But it is, though.
It's ideas. It's what will make your life better. For example, one of the things that I argue and would have mentioned had I been on the debate, both Republicans, Democrats talk about the size of government. Republicans say the government's too big, and they want tax cuts. There's one candidate that has a 2% reduction in the size of government every year, something like that. Government's going to get bigger and bigger no matter who's president, unless we do something radical, and that radical is this. We need an amendment to the Constitution to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP. Otherwise, it gets bigger and bigger. Whether Ronald Reagan is president, whether George W. Bush is president, whether W is president, whether George Herbert Walker Bush is president, whether Trump is president. Largely because the biggest driver of our budget are the so-called entitlements. Even Barack Obama and Bill Clinton use the word unsustainable to describe them, but nothing happens. If you run promising you're going to reform entitlement programs, you're going to lose elections because the other side is going to accuse you of not caring about the poor, the sick, the elderly. The only way to do the kinds of reforms and the kinds of cuts that's necessary is a law that's forcing the politicians to do that. And the only way you're going to do that is to amend the Constitution. And so as the president with my bully pulpit, I will be explaining to American people, particularly young voters, that these programs are not going to be there for you unless there's serious, dramatic reform. And it's not pie in the sky. The Constitution has been amended on average every 10 years. And all you have to do is make the case to the American people. And nobody's doing that. Not Trump, not DeSantis, not anybody.
It's been amended 27 times. I think that if the number's that 27 times.
So my point is, to your argument, I don't look at it that way. I think that we need to explain to the American people why my policies are better than this guy's policies, why I'm more likely to have an economy that thrives than this guy, why I'm more likely to be able to secure borders than this guy. And if you put together a set of policies and issues that a voter can vote for, that voter will vote for you.
Well, I would say the only reason I'm making this argument is because if you think about why Trump did well in 2016, his message was not like the rest of you guys. Everybody had the same message. Every candidate had the same message. Oh, we're going to do this. Everybody sounded the same. Marco Rubio sounded the same as Ted Cruz, sounded the same as, Huckabee sounded the same as, you name them all. Everybody said the same. Here's a guy that came in and said, I've given money to everybody here, okay? There's a reason why everybody's clapping for this guy, Jeb Bush, is because they didn't let me come in here. All the people here are his donors. All the booing, they're all the donors. That's right. It's true. Right. These guys all gave money to him. He took money from them. Jeb goes, ha, ha, ha. That laugh is a weak laugh. And his messaging, I think Trump won in 16 because Trump had a blue ocean. Everybody on the stage was fighting the same fight except for one guy. And he crushed everybody. Everybody was like, you know what, man, what angle do we take against this guy? He has given me money. I can't take that argument. He did say this. He did say that. And then today, even with RFK, aside from them bullying him the way they have, why is RFK getting momentum? Actually, think about it. Why is RFK getting so much momentum? Because maybe the American people are sick of the establishment. And the anti-establishment message the last two elections is resonating with people. One, the way Trump did it. One, the way, in COVID, which was catastrophic what happened with COVID. So take that part aside. In today's election, RFK, if you were to say the guys that are getting momentum on two sides, take the guys that are getting momentum on both sides, even set aside Trump, whether you like him or not, Vivek is one of them, RFK is one of them. Both of their messages is an anti-establishment message. And everybody else's message is pretty much an established message. Nikki Haley is an established message. Chris Christie is an establishment message. Pence is an establishment message. Who else you want me to give you? Everybody is an establishment message except for two candidates, Vivek and RFK, and they're gaining momentum.
I think Trump also came in as somebody who was in your face. He talked about political correctness. He was able to, in a very skillful way, demean his opponents one after another. I think people find him funny, find him entertaining, charismatic. I've never seen a politician like that. I think he's a unique person. I've never seen anything quite like it.
Perfect. Let's go to the last example of a guy that ran like Trump but didn't have a personality. Can you think of and who got 19%, 20%? No one thought it was going to happen. It would cost another guy that was supposed to be a two-term president that became a one-term president, that in his documentary there was one guy he didn't want to comment on, and that was Ross Perot. George Bush Sr. didn't want to talk about Ross Perot in his documentary. When the word Perot came out, he did not want to. He says, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. So what happened with Perot? How did Perot speak? He wasn't funny. He was boring.
Actually, he was funny. Now, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
Now, I'm gonna get on the hood. I'm gonna look at it right now. I'm gonna go look at it and put it back down. That's gonna take care of that. I'm not gonna soundbite it. He was hysterical.
But he wasn't Trump. He didn't have Trump's personality.
And that's a damn shame.
He wasn't. He didn't have Trump. But what did he have?
But he also ran as an independent.
He had a message of anti-establishment.
Independents don't win. They just don't win.
But it's not what I'm. The point. Well, Trump was an independent who ran as a Republican.
Yeah, but he ran as a party.
Totally agree. So Ross Perot made a mistake running as a independent. He could have ran as a Republican. Could have been a different story. He could have ran as a party to represent that. He would have had maybe a different story. But the point I'm making here is, all I'm interested in as a business owner, as a guy that studies the markets to see who has an advantage on the way they market themselves. I look at DeSantis, and I say, here's a guy with a phenomenal resume. Who has a better resume after COVID than him? Nobody. There's not a single governor with a better resume than him after COVID. What happened with his messaging? Doesn't connect. He sounds like everybody else.
Again, I think you're making it much more complicated than it is. I think there's a phenomenon known as Donald J. Trump, likes of which nobody has ever seen. This guy never even ran for office, let alone held office, wasn't a general, came out of nowhere. He used to be a Democrat, then he was an independent, then he became a Republican. He had almost 100% name recognition from The Apprentice. There's just been nothing like him. I'm shocked that Ron DeSantis is not doing better. But when you compare him to Donald Trump, I'm sorry. It's like Larry Holmes. He comes after Muhammad Ali. I'm sorry. Larry Holmes was a great fighter, but when you come after Muhammad Ali, that's a big shadow. And so DeSantis is in Donald Trump's shadow right now. And when Donald Trump, if he gets elected again, he becomes lame duck the next day. I think the front runner in 2028 will be Ron DeSantis.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think so?
Oh yeah, Florida. He stood down COVID. He stood down wokeism. He got reelected with 20%. He took Miami-Dade County. He looks great. He's a war hero, great wife, a cancer survivor. What's not to like? It's just not your time. It's Donald Trump's time. Sorry.
Is MAGA going to support him after him essentially going after Trump?
I think so. But that's a long way away. I mean, that's a real far down the road. But I really think that we just have to recognize that Donald Trump, I've never seen a one-term president hold on to the party like this. When Jimmy Carter lost, he couldn't get a table at Fatburger. When George Herbert Walker Bush lost, nobody talked to him. This guy lost. He's a one-term president, and he maintained his grip over the party. I've never seen anything like it. And I've been watching politics since I was 8 years old.
Are you a sports guy?
Yeah.
Okay. You ever seen the movie Billy Bean, the Moneyball?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
We watch that movie all the time.
It's a great
one of our
movie.
favorite movies.
Yeah.
He's the only guy that I brought 3 times to speak at my different events.
Wow. Is he still the Oakland GM?
I think he is. I don't know if he went anywhere, but he got the offer from Boston, but he never took the money.
Never took it, yeah.
So when you meet him, so this guy was a 5-tool player, right? He was supposed to be the next, whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a part of the movie where he asked the question of is it Noah? Is it actor's name?
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill. He says, so let me ask you a question. After I left, I know you searched me, and I know you looked at my numbers. Would you have picked me number 1 draft pick? He says, yeah, I would have. He says, stop bullshitting me. Tell me the truth. Where would you have picked me? He said, I would have picked you in the 9th round.
9th round, yeah.
No signing bonus.
He says,
and you would have gone to San Francisco.
And he takes a drink and he puts it down. He says, Got it. Well, pack your bags. Come down here. I just signed you. I bought you from the Cleveland Indians, right?
Right.
Okay. So here's all I'm going. Jonah, the guy that plays, who does he play, by the way, in the movie? Is he playing Podesta?
Paul Di Podesta.
Paul Di Podesta, right? So, and he comes in, he's saying all these years, we're watching 61 2 days ago, the whole story with Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle, the owner of the Yankees, like, I brought you to your Bombers. I don't care your 260 batting average, hit the homer, swing for the fence. That's why we brought you here, right? Back in the days, baseball was about what? Who can hit the home runs? Who can get the eyeballs? Who can fill up the arena? Everything changed once, Di Podesta, on-base percentage, all this other stuff. I think you guys are so been in this world for so long in the and I keep saying you guys. I mean, people who are in the political side. I don't want to put you as you guys, but you're part of media. You've been around for a long time. Right. Hell, you got a star in the freaking Hall of Fame. On the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yeah.
So I think that world, you are so used to saying the same lines, the same things every 3-4 years, that nobody has sat there and challenged the establishment of media, opinions, radio, whatever. No one's challenged you guys to say, I don't think you're looking at the right categories of who to choose as a candidate. I think you keep looking at the same old way of selecting candidates. And I think what Trump is doing to that world, he's shocked the hell out of everybody to say, okay, what used to matter is not what matters today. What matters today is very different. Let's look at a golf score of candidates to put up there to look at and then realize, nope, this guy's not going to do it. He just doesn't have the X factor. He doesn't have the following. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. The score here, golf score, the number one guy, if I had more time on my hands and I wasn't running 9 companies, I would hire, I'm being serious with you right now, I would hire 10 analysts, bring them in, put the last 500 candidates that we've had, Dems, right, independent, everything. Get every one of their scoring based on 40 different categories, then eliminate 10 of the categories, the bottom 10, then go 30, then go eliminate bottom 10, then go 20, then eliminate bottom 10, then go top 10. And then I would go based on the top 10 most important areas to select a candidate, look at a golf score and say, you know what, look at this. Look what trend we notice. This guy did this because of this. That guy, no, this guy's not going to win. That guy's not going to win. Not saying there's some people that do this out there, but I think...
You act like it's mathematical. It's not. It's not.
But I think it is.
Remember in the movie
I think it is,
Moneyball?
Yeah.
He said, you think you know, but you don't. He had all these coaches there. You don't. Who saw Donald Trump coming? Nobody did.
Yeah.
Nobody did.
Yeah.
Who saw Joe Biden coming in 2020? Nobody did. Not until Clyburn got behind him. This is unpredictable. I mean, I never thought Donald Trump was going to get the nomination until...
Well, that's a different story, though, because you're talking about the Astros winning the World Series.
Here's the deal. I'm at home when he comes down the escalator.
Yeah.
And he says, Mexicans, they're rapists, or this, that, the other. Oh, my God. This is going to be one of the shortest campaigns in history. The next day, I'm in an area of L.A. called Sunland, which is a blue-collar, mostly white area. Mm-hmm. And I'm at this restaurant called Coco's, which is like a Denny's. I'm at the bar having my vegetarian breakfast, bacon, eggs, and hash browns. Guy walks up to me. He says,
well, at least the chicken was a vegetarian.
Are you Larry Elder? I said, yeah. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm here on business. He said, what do you think about what my guy said last night? I said, my guy? He said, yeah, Donald Trump. And the guy, by the way, was a painter, as in house painter.
Yeah.
And I said, what did you think of him? He said, it's about time somebody spoke for me, and he walked away.
Wow.
Another guy comes up to me 5 minutes later. You Larry Elder? Yeah. What are you doing here? I'm here. What did you think about what Trump said? What did you think about what Trump said last night? Man, it's about time somebody stood up for us little people. I was there for 45 minutes, and that kind of conversation repeated itself over and over and over again. 2 guys were Hispanic. 1 guy looked like he was Asian American. And I went on the air that day, and I said, I recounted what I just told you, and I said, I've never seen a Republican connect with regular people like that since Ronald Reagan. This guy's going to get the nomination. He's going to become the next president of the United States.
Yeah.
And nobody was saying it at the time.
Okay.
So my point is, who saw that coming? Even CNN, MSNBC, hee-haw, as I call it. They kept putting him up there because their ratings...
There is a category for that.
The ratings went up, but they thought of him as a joke.
Okay.
Ariana Huffington went on television and said, we're covering him in Huffington Post in the entertainment section because he's not being taken
I would create that as a category on the golf score. I would create that as a... So here's what I wrote based on what you just said. So let's have some fun together.
Okay. All right.
All right, number 1, Moneyball, okay? Mm-hmm. Remember the scene where all the old scouts are like, I like this one guy. Who would want to have his girlfriend at best as a 6? You should never have a start as a 6 as a girlfriend. No, like,
you didn't have
these are all the
confidence.
old guys in their 60s and 70s who are trying to say how you should recruit. And then this guy saying, this is all you got?
Got a beautiful swing. Got a beautiful swing.
Yeah. Like,
why doesn't he hit?
Yeah, why isn't he hit? Well, he's going to learn how to hit. So we're going to teach him. That's a part of the time. The scouts thought they knew what they were talking about because they've been in that world for so long, okay? And then a new player shows up, a new guy, Jonah Hill, DePodesta, saying we got to look at it in a completely different way. I'll give you the other one. One of the things I would put as a category is, this is what I visualize a lot of candidates choosing their presidential election, what they're going to campaign on. Here's what they do. Let me role play and tell me if I'm wrong, okay? And call me out.
You're wrong.
I love it. You're wrong. Let me finish my point.
One quick thing, though. You mentioned Vivek as a non-establishment guy. He's at 5%, 6%.
Yeah.
Come on.
But no, he's at 6% because he's going against the number one establishment guy.
That's what I'm talking about.
No, that's not what you're talking about.
That's the elephant in the room.
Then
right
you don't
there.
understand
Donald
my
Trump.
point. No, you don't. No. You're not understanding my point. Vivek is following the playbook of Trump.
And he's at 5%.
Because there is a Trump. What if there was no Trump? Take Trump out.
But there is.
No, I understand that. But because the guy ahead of him is a bigger anti-establishment candidate, which is attractive to people in America
and
today.
DeSantis has higher numbers than Vivek. And according to you, DeSantis is a establishment
Because
guy.
DeSantis, a year ago, you had no clue who the guy was. You've known DeSantis. Vivek, you didn't know a year ago who he was. He was not even
Your argument is you got to get somebody who's non-traditional.
I'll give you Vivek's league.
Non-establishment.
No, I will.
Fine. Vivek is that way.
You're not.
He's number 3. The next guy is, in your view, an establishment guy.
Mr. Elder, Mr. Hollywood Walk of Fame. Let me push back.
Okay.
As the guy that's 30 years your junior, just to give you a different perspective.
Okay.
I could be wrong, and I'm very comfortable with that.
You are.
Hear me out.
You are wrong.
By the way, this has been the history. For the longest time, 70-year-olds thinking 40-year-olds are wrong.
All right.
And the 40-year-olds kind of tend to disrupt a little bit. And then the 40-year-olds think they know it all. 20-year-olds disrupt with social media. We have to pay attention to these types of guys. So watch this. So you're saying, Vivek doesn't have that going on. Yep, because Vivek would be missing one massive category on the golf score. What is that? Online persona, TV personality. You don't have it. You started too late, way too late. Trump's been doing it for 50 years, okay? One of the biggest things for me, an anti-establishment guy, would be your online, your social persona, your TV persona for how long? Whether it's not necessarily a Q score, following, virability today, stories today, all that other stuff. So that Vivek does not have. That doesn't work in his favor, okay? 2 would be charm and selling. DeSantis doesn't have charm and selling. Vivek has that, okay? DeSantis is more policies. And as much as we want to put policies at the top, I think policies is maybe top 5, maybe top 3. I think there's things way more important than policies when it comes down to getting eyeballs. Now, Biden, I totally agree, but that's a black swan event. That's not a typical traditional season pandemic. It's a very different season.
I don't even think it's that. I think he was bringing up Clyburn. Let's just call Biden the Astros case because the Democratic, because they did the Democratic DNC. I think we all agree decided to cheat. So let's take Biden off the side and just say, hey, they cheated it and they picked him. Isn't that correct?
They decided to decap Bernie Sanders because they didn't think he could win.
Right. They didn't like the way it was working out in the Democratic process through elections and primary state by state, and they just decided
Can
he
I
was
add
the
one
guy.
other thing here?
Yeah.
Can I add one other thing here? One other thing that kind of helps out here, that if you put Ross Perot, that if you put Vivek, who's a junior, that if you put Trump, they have this thing called FU money, okay?
Right.
That they don't need. So now you're agreeing. Thank you, Larry. We are converting a little bit.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
I'm agreeing with you that Donald Trump is a unique species.
Is that the name of a pack?
He's got FU money. He's got 100% name recognition. He's got a personality like nobody that I've ever seen.
And Vivek doesn't have one of the 4. Vivek does not one of the 4. And by the way, which one does DeSantis have? Let's take a look at this. Does DeSantis have a big social media following?
No.
Okay. Does DeSantis have charm?
No.
Does he have policies?
Yes.
Does he have FU money?
No.
Do you see it's 1 out of 4? You understand the point I'm making to you? The game is changing. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy.
Moneyball 2, starring
Holy
Patrick
moly.
Bet-David, Larry Elder.
This is the point I'm trying to make.
But the whole thing with Trump is
Biden
Trump is an absolute anomaly. We've never seen anything like him. He's got check. The policy thing is almost irrelevant, and I think a lot of his policies were good.
I have 1/5 one that I wrote.
You say the policy thing is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. That's why he a Republican. Republicans stand for strong borders. They stand for strong national security. They stand for
Law
lower
and
taxes.
order.
They stand for low regulations. So that's assumed. But
I wrote one additional point here, Mr. Elder. The guy that listens to you more than you listen to me, okay? I've listened to you. You're the guy, okay, that we follow. You are the man.
I am
okay?
the man.
You are the man.
I agree with that. So we agree on that.
Oh, by the way, we don't have to agree on that. We've agreed on that for years.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's the part. The other thing that he does, which I like, that Perot did, and that Trump did, and that Vivek did, the fatherlessness, bringing it in, but I'll tell you what it is. It's creating an issue that no one is talking about. Okay, Trump came up and said the wall, border, rapist, drugs. You're like, whoa, no one's talking about that. The shock factor, right? And everybody else is like, I think the number one issue we have is the economy. I think the number one issue we have is health care. I think when. Okay, and then they go wrong with it. This guy's coming with a shock factor saying, nope, here's the number one issue. Boom, here's what we're dealing with.
You're acting like he didn't talk about the economy.
But those are not his number one, though. Those are not his number one.
I think the assumption was that Donald Trump, as a businessman, knows more about the economy than other people.
And he does.
I didn't say he didn't.
Yeah.
My point is, you've got to assume that he was elected in part because of his attitude about the economy and the assumption that people thought he was going to. Look, here's another thing about Donald Trump I've never seen before. And my argument is he's a unique species. That's what I'm saying. I was with him in Cleveland in 2016. We campaigned together at Black Church. And I got to speak to him for about 15 minutes privately. And I said to him, there's one thing you should apologize for. He said, I know what you're going to say. It's what I said about John McCain. I said, I couldn't care less. I said, you said that George W. Bush lied us into the Iraq War. I said, I know that you argue that you didn't support the war. Fair enough. But nobody lied. I've talked to Condoleezza Rice. I've talked to Colin Powell. They said the intel was wrong. Nobody lied. I said the British were shooting at the Iraqis were shooting at the British and American planes patrolling the southern and no-fly zones. Saddam Hussein was stealing from the oil for food program. We know he had chemical weapons because he used them on the Kurds, he used them on the Persians. He tried to assassinate President George Herbert Walker Bush. There were lots of reasons in the resolution that was signed by the Senate and the House on why we went to war. Nobody lied. And I said, that's what Ted Kennedy's been saying. Week after week after week, we were told lie after lie after lie. I said, you are giving the left talking point to the media. It's not right. And he went like this. However, he never said it again. And see, Donald Trump's way of apologizing is to never say the same wrong-headed thing twice. My point is, he got away with it. He got away with Access Hollywood. Who else do you know that could survive scandals like that?
Nobody.
So I'm just saying, I've never seen anything like it. And so when you're going, we need this, you're trying to reverse engineer Donald Trump. It's Donald Trump.
I got a technical question for you.
Yes.
Okay. Almost everybody that runs for office has, I'm hoping maybe you have a different insight than we do because we're not in the world you're in. You've been in it for a while. Everybody that runs or becomes president, there's stories about women that come out. Mm-hmm. You've had that. Trump's had it. Reagan's had it. How come there's no stories of
Kennedy?
women? Can I finish my point? Tom, seriously. You got everybody.
Is Tom always like this?
Tom is always
He's always like this.
Okay? He's the famous guy doing that.
He's had 2 volts.
Yeah.
Okay, so once again, I'll start from the beginning before Tom kind of had to jump in. So why is it that every candidate that's...
What are we going to do about the Tom factor?
I think Tom is the Wikipedia.
We call him Uncle
By the way, he's
Tom.
not done yet. He has to do 3 more of these until I ask my question. So wait for it. Can I just do it, Tom? Okay. Why is it that every man that's run for office or become a president has had women from the past that's come up? You've had it. Trump's had, I think, one only from the past. Obviously, I'm being very sarcastic. You got
like 12.
You got
Biden.
Clinton, Biden, Bush. You got. How come there's no woman from Obama's past?
Richard Nixon.
How come there's no one from Obama's
Nobody
past?
from Richard Nixon's past either.
Huh.
Well, back in the days, there was no social media. So I'm going more like 50 years,
see.
right? So why is it 40 years? Why is it that there's no
Obama.
woman from his past?
Are
you think he just didn't have game, or you think because I
the
see him
girl
having
is really
game.
good at secrets.
He's a good-looking guy. He has a good shot, left-handed.
Yeah.
I've seen him make the shot from the side. Very handsome.
Although he didn't start. He didn't start in high school.
He did not.
Yeah.
He did not start.
But why do you think? Was it like is he that devout of a Christian? Maybe it's because his level of devotion to.
Since we're talking about Obama, let me get this off my chest. My disappointment with Obama has nothing to do with any of this, obviously. It's that he ran as the guy that people thought was the guy who was in Boston in 2004. I was in the arena when he gave the introduction speech to John Kerry. There's no blue America. There's no red America.
DNC.
Just one America.
Phenomenal speech.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
There's no black America. There's no
Yep.
white America. Just one. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I turned to my producer and I said, all he said was a bunch of platitudes, but he said them well. This guy's going to run for president someday. So Obama decides to run before he even knew where the bathroom was. And he's at a black church, and he's talking about how much racism he thinks there is in America. And this is really important. He said, the Moses generation, referring to the generation of Martin Luther King, has gotten us, quote, 90% of the way there, close quote. He said, my generation, he referred to his generation as the Joshua generation, has to get us that additional 10%. And I thought that was reasonable because there was a Fox opinion poll, 2002. 8% of Americans think there's a possibility that Elvis is still alive. So you have to write off around 10% of the American people. So what he was really saying, in my opinion, is we've gotten to the point now where MLK's dream of people evaluating you based on content of character rather than skin has pretty much been realized.
Yeah.
He was on 60 Minutes. This is when he was running. He hadn't yet caught up with Hilary, but he was coming. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put him on there. And Steve Croft, the correspondent, said, Senator, if you don't win, will it be because of racism? And I'm at home, and I said, let's see how he answers this question. Let's see if he gives a Victocrat answer along the lines of what Al Sharpton would say or Jesse Jackson would say, both of whom ran for president, and claim they didn't get there because of racism. And Obama said, no. If I don't win, it will be because I've not articulated a vision.
Good for
American
him.
People. That's exactly what I said.
Good for him.
I said, I'm not going to vote for you.
Yeah.
Tax, spend, regulate, Obamacare, but good for you. He won with 53% of the vote. He walked into the Oval Office third week of January 2009 with 70% approval. How? Did all of a sudden people say, I want my taxes raised? I want Obamacare. No, they said at the very least, he's going to put a knife, fork in the notion that America remains systemically racist. Mm-hmm. Both blacks and whites thought race relations would improve when he walked in the Oval Office. When he left, both blacks and whites thought it got worse. Mm-hmm. Because for 8 years, he played race card after race card after race card. From the Cambridge police acted stupidly, to if I had a son, he looked like Trayvon, to embracing Black Lives Matter, to saying that racism is in America's DNA, to having an AG, Eric Holder, who accused people that wanted voter ID of engaging in pernicious racism. Okay. He had Al Sharpton in the White House over 70 times. He played the race card time and time and time again. That's not the person that the American people thought they hired. And that's my problem with him. He's made things worse. Here's a guy that had every advantage. Best prep school in the state of Hawaii, becomes the president of Harvard Law Review, charmed existence, and here he is playing the race card. That's not what the American people thought they hired when they voted for him in 2008.
So, basic question: why? So let me
power and votes. He wants to get black people angry because black people will go in there like lemmings and pull that lever 90%, 95% of the Democratic Party.
Do you think
because of social justice and equity, whatever the hell that means?
Do you think is it his ideas or somebody that's put it in his ear because of some stuff from the past hurting his legacy? Do you think it's him motivated or outside motivated?
He wanted to get reelected, and he knew that if he
it's simple as that.
It's simple as that. You think Democrats, you think Nancy Pelosi really believes America's systemically racist? I mean, do you think James Clyburn really believes that? Do you think Obama really believes that? BS. He knows it's not true, but he also knows he wants to win elections. You don't win elections by telling black people, look, think about crime, think about schools, think about jobs. No, you win elections. This guy over here is a racist. This guy over here wants to hold you back. This guy over here wants to oppress you. That's why we got this nonsense about reparations. By the way, notice how Obama hasn't said jack about reparations? His whole career, he opposed them. Where is he?
Oh, he's been quiet.
Say something.
He's been very
quiet.
Say something.
He doesn't want to get canceled. He knows he's going to get canceled. And he wants to remain relevant. He hasn't said a damn thing about this movement towards reparations, even though he's opposed them his whole career.
And Larry, I think where Pat was going,
he's made things worse.
I agree. I think playing the race card the whole time to go in. But anyway, what Pat I think was getting into was about the whole the girl, no female scandal or anything like that. Recently, I mean, last podcast we talked about Tucker Carlson.
I know where you were going with that.
Yes, and there, here's my question.
I'm not going to go there.
No, but here's my question, Larry. Why Tucker Carlson, probably, I mean, one of the highest streaming looked at eyeballs in the history of Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Why, out of all people, at this specific time, would you bring up a man who has been on camera multiple times for 25 years, stating, passing lie detector tests, signing affidavits. I don't care about his past. This is what I did with Obama. Why? What do you think the motive is to come up with? I mean, the guy's not getting money. The guy doesn't look well at all. What's the motive behind going on a platform like that? And
what's the motive behind Tucker interviewing him, or the guy going on the platform to talk about it?
I'm more Tucker. What's Tucker's
motivation?
I think he thinks it's news.
Really?
I think he thinks it's a story that the media. I think his angle is the media were aware of this, or could have been aware of this, or should have been aware of this, but they wanted to protect Barack Obama, and they circled the wagons around him. The way they did around Jeremiah Wright. Remember when Jeremiah Wright came out?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the media is not talking about this until the video came out with him saying KKK, United States, and then they had to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just ask you directly because these guys are.
So I think that's what Tucker is saying, that this was a bombshell story. He probably would not have been elected if this had been covered by the media, and it's an example of how biased the media are. I think that's what he's saying.
I'll just ask you directly. These guys both kind of.
No, don't say these guys. No, don't do that. Don't do that. You ask the question. Don't say these guys.
Don't say you guys.
Ask the question.
Do I care whether Obama might be gay?
Do you think Obama's gay?
I have no idea. Don't care.
Yeah.
What I care about is what I said earlier, that he ran promising to be a racial uniter and divided us and played the race card time and time again. Racism is in America's DNA. Are you effing kidding me? The first time Gallup asked white people if they'd vote for a black president was in the 50s, and only around 30% said yes. Now only about 4% said they wouldn't vote for a black person. So how does DNA change like that? That's what I'm angry about him for. He was a fraud. He was a fraud on racial conciliation, a huge fraud on that. The rest of the stuff, the tax, the spending, regulating, I knew that. But you don't walk into the Oval Office with 70% approval rating.
Who are you talking about right now? You're talking about
Obama, yeah.
He's a fraud.
But Larry, as much as you're saying you don't care, there's a huge percentage of the Republican base that actually believes this and actually believes that Michelle Obama isn't actually a man. They call her Big Mike. So I know that this is not your thing.
I don't know anybody that calls her that.
Stop it, Larry.
I didn't know him.
Before I came to Valuetainment 4 years ago, I never even heard that Michelle Obama was a man. I didn't think that Obama was gay. But I've heard this multiple times, hundreds of times. You must have heard this. And what do you say to that? What do you say to the Republican base who thinks that Michelle Obama is a freaking man and Obama's gay?
If the Republican base thought that Michelle Obama was every bit as graceful, as attractive as Jacqueline Kennedy, they still wouldn't have voted for him because of his policy. So it doesn't matter. It's inconsequential.
I don't know, Larry. I think you're skirting this one.
No, I'm not.
Well...
Well, but because some people are saying this, like I've heard, and Pat kind of brought it up, but I've been hearing this too, Larry, that the reason Tucker brought this up and had this guy speak is because, and how many times have we heard it, Pat, from how many people that Newsom's out, Newsom's saying he's not going to run. Yeah, the Kamala thing is a possibility, but that Michelle Obama is going to come in and say, hey, listen, I need to save this. Everybody's all messed up. Nobody's really running. Joe Biden's dying in front of our eyes.
So you think Tucker's motivation is to make sure that Michelle Obama doesn't become president?
They're saying, I didn't say it. What I'm saying is people have been saying online that this is one of those, okay, if she does announce that she's running, they're going to have to address this fact. Because I've never seen anybody ask Obama on camera, hey, just really quick, are you gay? Have you ever done any gay homosexual activities? Never once. And they've been silent since the day that this came out, Larry Sinclair. Michelle Obama took a flight to Spain and hung out with friends, and Barack didn't go with her. Just saying.
Hilary Clinton was accused by Juanita Broaddrick of
having that team around,
of threatening her.
Yep.
After Juanita Broaddrick said she'd been raped by Bill Clinton.
Yes.
I've not heard anybody ask Hillary whether or not it's true or false.
Yep.
People think that Hillary Clinton has committed murder multiple times. I've heard that.
My point is that there are a lot of no-fly zones the media has when it comes to protecting people on the left, and this is not uncommon. I couldn't care less whether Obama is gay. I couldn't care less whether or not Michelle is Big Mike. I think Obamacare is an abomination. I think what he did on race relations set this country back. That's what I care about.
Yeah, you're a policy guy. But that's the exact... If I asked Trump that, he'd be like, yeah, he's probably gay. Yeah, Michelle's probably a man, and that's why he gets eyeballs.
I don't think Trump would say that. Trump even conceded...
Trump has said way worse things about way less
even
people.
Conceded that Obama was born here after spending money to investigate all of
that. Birth certificate.
He started the whole birther claim. Well,
he was trying to win.
How nice of him to concede that.
No, he did not start that. Hillary started that, 2008.
Okay. That's correct.
Well,
bingo.
He promoted the hell out of it.
Game change. She started it. Sidney Blumenthal was her top aide. He goes to the McClatchy newspapers and says, Obama is not from here. He was born in Africa. And a guy named James Asher, you can look it up, took the advice seriously, put somebody on it, and they tracked it down. They found nothing to it. It was Hillary's campaign that started it. And everybody assumes Trump started it, but he did not. Hillary did it.
Yeah, but nobody knows that. Meaning, like, I think you're probably right.
Now they do. Millions of people now do.
That's true, but everyone thinks.
So I've done a service. If nothing else, I've done a service.
If you did a poll right now of who started the birther claims, I would say 90% of people would say Trump.
So many things about Donald Trump are just not true. For example, in November 2016, I think it was around November, before the election anyway, Bloomberg poll, the number one reason that likely voters gave for not liking Donald Trump is that they felt he had demeaned a disabled reporter, mocked a disabled reporter. Mm-hmm. He did not. We're talking about a guy named Serge Kowalewski, wrote for one of the big newspapers, and Donald Trump publicly said that people cheered the fall of the Twin Towers. And nobody could find a story. And then he found a story, and they went up to Serge Kowalewski, who wrote the story, and said, "Did you see this?" He goes, "Well, I sort of did. Well, I wasn't sure there were that many." And so Donald Trump mocked him in a town hall. He wasn't mocking his disability. And by the way, the guy doesn't go like this, which is what Donald Trump did. The guy has an atrophied arm, but he doesn't go like this. And Donald Trump did not mock him, but that's what people believe. There's a website called Catholics for Trump, where Donald Trump has used this gesture to mock himself, to mock an able-bodied general. Mm-hmm. It's what Donald Trump does because he's a stand-up comic. It's not true. Just as it's not true that Donald Trump said there were good Nazis and bad Nazis on both sides regarding Charlottesville. Even Jake Tapper, 2 years later, said, went back and looked at it. He wasn't saying that. He was saying there are good people and bad people on both sides of the debate on whether or not there should be a Confederate monument in the public square. But that's what a lot of people feel. Well, and the other big thing that people think about Donald Trump is that he was leading an insurrection on January 6th when, as you pointed out, what part of I want you to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard don't you understand? So many of the things that people hate Donald Trump's guts for are simply flat out false, including that he started the birther movement. He did not.
Well, this goes to the bigger question about the media. I actually agree with you.
Can you actually verify the Hillary Clinton birther versus
Absolutely.
Trump? Because there's a lot of people that believe Trump started it. Can you pull this up?
There's video of Morning Scarborough, Morning Joe show, where a guy named John Heilemann co-authored the book called Game Change is on.
Yeah, John Heilemann. Yeah.
John Heilemann.
Can you find that?
And Harold Ford is on the panel. And somebody mentions that Hillary started. He goes, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And Joe Scarborough turns to John Heilemann and said, well, John, you wrote the book, Game Change. What's the truth? He said, I'm confirming the notion that it was Hillary Clinton that started it. John Heilemann said that.
Well, it's only 10 years too late.
Can you find that clip if you could, Rob? If you can somehow...
Yeah, that's it. Joe, right there. Joe, Obama Muslim talk started with Hillary.
2015.
Right there.
And then this talks about the birther as well with Hillary.
Can we play this?
Well, the whole birther thing is Obama's from Africa.
Yeah. Can you get audio or no, Rob?
I mean, God, you see that interview? I mean, the Clinton team wrote the questions.
Too.
I mean, for obviously, that was stunning. It was stunning. She is asked on Face the Nation about who at the State. She said the State Department authorized it. No, there was Dickerson didn't follow up with the question who at the State Department.
Well, that's because the campaign did not allow that.
Because
you know that this interview was set up so that certain questions on policy were required for a certain amount of time, and then they could go into emails for a certain amount of time, and then they.
Can you fast forward a little bit to see if this is the one, Rob? Just kind of fast forward.
It was textbook planned out. I can see.
Very rich. Now listen.
He says he is.
By the Clinton. That is the truth.
Go back a little bit. Go back 20 seconds.
That's it.
This started with Hillary Clinton, and it was
go back 20 seconds, Rob. You go back 20 seconds. Right there. That's good.
For spreading the rumors.
Okay, go back 10 more seconds. This was the one. Yeah, right there.
I can say one other thing too.
There we go.
It was rich this weekend. I guess we have to get our digs in on Hillary Clinton here because I thought we were going to get through a segment without talking about her.
Oh, well,
but for Hillary Clinton to come out and criticize anybody for spreading the rumors about Barack Obama when it all started
on 60 Minutes.
When it all started with her and her campaign passing things around in the Democratic primary. Rich. Now listen.
He says he is.
The Republicans are wrong for doing what they're doing. This started with Hillary Clinton. And it was spread.
Good for Morning Joe for saying this.
I'm shocked. Back in 2008.
I don't even know.
That is the truth.
Harold,
I don't believe.
Don't.
But Mika, you can't tell me to stop when the two of you are making comments. It'd be different if you have if there's a basis, an actual evidentiary basis for what you're saying, then I would
What
agree
year
with
was
it.
this?
That they're
I
the
have
ones that spread it in
experience.
2008?
That spread what in 2008?
That Barack
this-
Obama may not be
Campaign?
Barack Obama may not be a Christian.
Well, we should ask Heilman this
Watch
question.
this.
That's John Heilman on the right.
Heilman?
Historian of the 2008 campaign.
I don't recall that, but if you're telling me that was the case, I just don't recall.
John
It
Heilman?
was the case.
It was
Thank
within
you.
It was the case. Thank you, John Heilman.
Didn't she go on 60 Minutes and not actually
It was
say
the
no?
case.
So he says he is.
I'm offering my
What was that?
I'm affirming the Scarborough-Brzezinski.
Okay, do you know about this
assertion.
Yell ahead on morning
CBS
show.
interview? Was that rigged?
I don't know anything about. I have no knowledge whatsoever of what happened.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what
between the
happened.
campaign and John Dickerson.
I
have
don't
no
know
idea.
what happened on that interview
Not
either,
either.
but you
No
do
idea.
recall that a week earlier she went on Andrea Mitchell, and it was all emails all the time for the first 20 minutes of that interview.
That's pretty
So she has done
intense.
interviews in
Yeah,
which
you can
it
stop
was
it right
no
there.
So you
holds
were
barred.
right.
No.
Of course I'm.
So,
But more importantly, a guy named James Asher, ASHER, who worked for McClatchy,
Pull that up.
said that Sidney Blumenthal approached him and said Obama is not from here. And he tracked it down and found nothing to it.
got it.
And Sidney Blumenthal is Hillary's hatchet man.
You know what's interesting about that is that was in what year, Rob?
15.
That was 2015. This was the year I literally used to watch Morning Joe and Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, John Heilman, and everyone that's on there literally every morning for 2 straight years, okay? And this was when Joe Scarborough was actually a friend of Donald Trump. So was Mika Brzezinski. They were he was at their wedding.
Joe Scarborough used to be a Republican.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
And used to demean Al Sharpton, introduced a resolution calling Al Sharpton a race hustling demagogue.
Right.
And now they kiss each other's butts.
well, he's on his show
It's
every
amazing.
morning.
It's
He's on his
amazing.
show.
Yeah.
But this is my point.
The Reverend. Reverend.
Thank you. This is my point. In a few short years, from 2016 to the Trump election to basically where we are today, the media has completely gone to different sides.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Completely gone to different sides. So here's my question. The media has already done this. If there's one thing I've learned since Trump has been elected office, that the deep state is real.
Absolutely.
And they do not want Donald Trump to be president. They didn't want him in 2016.
Right.
They didn't want him in 2020. They did everything in their power to get him out of office.
Right.
And they're going to do everything in their power to do it again in 2024. So if he is elected, which is 50-50 at this point, they're going to do everything in their power to belittle his candidacy or his presidency. He's a racist, he's white percent, Russia, this, that, the other. They're going to play clips of January 6th. It's just going to happen over and over and over again. How does someone like Trump combat the media, big tech, Hollywood? How does he even go against that at this point?
The good news is, I said I was a cautious pessimistic, but the good news is Donald Trump, Republicans now have almost half the Hispanic vote. Donald Trump got elected with 8% of the black vote in 2016. When he ran in 2020, he got 12%. That's a 50% increase. He got 20% of the black male vote. People are waking up. They're seeing the nonsense. And they're seeing their pocketbook. They go to the gas station, they go to the store, they're paying a lot more for the same stuff. And you can call Donald Trump all sorts of names if you want. All I know is I'm paying a lot more for gas. I'm paying a lot more for chicken, for bacon, for milk, for egg, for cheese than I did before.
Yeah, but that's grassroots. How do you handle the top? Okay, so there's bottom up and then top down. So the top down, the media, Hollywood, big tech,
FBI.
everything, even clearly the deep state. How does he combat that? Because the fear is it's just going to be this antagonistic, vindictive relationship.
The good news is
part two.
the trust in the media has never been lower, and that's because Donald Trump has popularized the expression fake news and disinformation. You combat it by telling the truth and by standing your ground, which is why people love Donald Trump so much. He's a fighter.
So
He's
it sounds like even though you're running for president, he has your vote.
If he becomes a nominee, he has my vote. I would rather be the nominee, and I'll ask him to be my running mate.
By the way,
Trump will be your running mate.
Even though we just verified by Democrats that the birther was started by Hilary,
Right.
can you show the poll how it's doing, Rob? I'm just curious to know because some people want to believe this. They have to believe this.
Of course, because they can't admit that they're wrong.
They can't handle the truth from the movie.
You can't handle the truth.
Okay, go to the poll if you can, Rob, just to tell us if you can show us how the poll is doing percentage-wise.
Even Hillary once attacked Donald Trump for starting the racist rumor that Donald Trump...
Zoom in a little bit so we can see it. Zoom in a little bit. 24% still believe it's Trump.
25%. Even though you just showed, like 8 minutes ago. So that means,
Well, that's our poll, right?
that's our poll.
Okay, 76% believe
Yeah,
that
for
Hillary
sure.
started.
But think about it, 25%.
But
are
what
like,
she's trying to say is, imagine the poll of people that are not watching the show.
Can you find a poll of people asking who started the birther thing?
There's a regular poll.
I assure you, the majority of Americans, especially Democrats, believe that Donald Trump started it.
And while he's looking for that, Larry, I think something that you said
and there's no question Donald Trump promoted it.
Of course.
But starting it, he did not start it.
Well, sometimes they say you don't want to be first, you need to be second. Right. So, like, look at MySpace, defunct. Look at Facebook. They're $1 trillion company. And Larry, Trump was second. He was the man in it.
By the way, you have to give Hillary credit because she's the first one that said it's the election was a fraud. First one that said birther. First one.
Russia.
The way this woman is
email, like she's untouchable,
master
Larry.
of deception.
30,000 emails. Poof, gone.
Holy moly.
How is she?
Pays for the dossier, nothing.
But Obama made her Secretary of State, Larry Elder.
Yeah, because he knows she's a killer. He knows what's up.
Goes to Juanita Broderick and says, you better keep your mouth shut or else. Nothing.
And Larry, how is she so untouchable? Can you explain that to me? Like, I don't get.
Well, she did lose the election against Donald Trump in 2016 because her unfavorable ratings were as high, if not higher, than Donald Trump's. They kind of offset each other.
Wow, but I'm saying, how is she? Is she that embedded with the FBI and the DOJ and she can literally kill someone and get away with it, literally,
allegedly,
allegedly, literally.
Well, I'm not going to concede about that part, but yeah, of course. I mean, the DNC was fixed for her. Donna Brazile gave her campaign questions. Remember?
Yeah, I remember.
I mean, debate questions to make sure she was going to win the nomination. Look, there's a conspiracy of interest with the media, Democratic Party, big tech, Hollywood, academia, and we're against, and they're united against Republicans. They believe Republicans are bad people, are evil people, only care about the rich. That if you are pro-life, you're anti-female. If you want strong borders, you're a racist. That's how they feel, and that's what we're up against.
Larry, last question because I know we got to wrap up. Your friend, your good buddy, your compadre, Charlemagne the God.
Yes.
We mentioned him a little bit earlier.
Yes.
You were on his show, The Breakfast Club, massive audience, massive black audience. Breaking news, I just found out you're black. That's crazy. I just found that out. Yeah.
Wait, crazy. What?
This just happened.
What?
Amazing. Respect. But you were on about 2 weeks ago, and then he did a reaction video, and he so politely called you the donkey of the day. And he went ham on you, brother.
I saw that.
So, he's got a huge voice in the black community, obviously. What do you say to him? What do you say to the black community that they think you're the donkey when you're just like, look, personal power, personal self-improvement, accountability.
Well, he called me the donkey of the day, as I recall, because I didn't make the debate stage and I complained about it. Mm-hmm. And I was on his show saying that there's no systemic racism in America. And here Larry is complaining about the systemic way he did not make the debate stage. Yeah. That's what he said. To me, that made no sense. And frankly, I believe he called me the donkey of the day because if you look at the comments, and I have a friend who read every single one of them, and these are his people, 85% of them thought he got his butt kicked.
Yep. Yeah. So would you go back again?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'm tentatively scheduled to go back.
How do you win over not only Charlemagne, but the people who think like Charlemagne? Because there's millions of them.
Tell the truth.
Yeah.
Tell the truth.
But they say you can't handle the truth.
I've been doing this for 40 years, what you guys are doing, for 40 years. And I've noticed something. When somebody calls up, and I always took pride in taking people who disagree with me, no one in the middle of a conversation is going to go, you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
I've had an epiphany. It's the person who's driving, who's listening, that I'm talking to. And so I know that Charlemagne, the guy, is not going to go, Larry, I never thought about this. And you're right. There is no systemic racism. I need to rethink my assumptions. He's not going to do that. But his listeners will. And if you look at the comments, many of them have. Not saying they suddenly become card-carrying, Trump-supporting Republicans, but they're beginning to rethink their assumptions. They know fatherlessness is a bigger problem than systemic racism. They see the schools. They see the crime. Well, can I give you one quick story?
Go for it.
When I was in high school, there was a guy named Gilbert, and he was a iffy kind of student. He wasn't a bad student, but he wasn't somebody that was academically oriented as I was. I told you my dad used to have a cafe, and I didn't like working for him. So when my dad and I stopped talking to each other at 15 years old, I decided to get me a job in the summer with the county, LA County. You had to go downtown and take this big test. There must have been 300 or 400 people. This is in the late 60s. Most of the people there were white. And one of the guys taking the test was this guy named Gilbert from my high school. And I saw him, and It was a 3-hour exam, math, reading comprehension, stuff like that. And then you had to go out in the hall, and then they grade the paper. You come back in. So I see Gilbert. He goes, "Hey, Larry, what's up?" I said, "What's going on, Gilbert?" He said, "Watch out. They're going to get us." I said, "Who's going to get us?" He said, "The white people who are grading these exams."
Yeah.
I said, "They're going to get us?" He said, watch them flunk us." So we go back in, about 300 people, as I said. They call out your name if you are to remain, meaning you pass the test. And then they would give you a bunch of options for jobs. And if you didn't get your name called, you had to leave. So I'm sitting there calling off the names. Of course, my name was called, as were the names of a number of black people. And then you hear a screeching of chairs as the people who weren't called get up to leave. So Gilbert walks right by me, and he says, as he sees me sitting there, obviously my name was one of those who was called, who was named. He said, "What did I tell you?" How can somebody make an argument that white people are going to flunk black people? I'm black. I'm sitting there. I'm not flunked. And he walks by me and he says, "What did I tell you?" This is the mentality. This is an illness. And a lot of black people have that. We have to raise our game. I remember the dream team in the Olympics, because we began losing matches. We can't send college kids anymore and expect to win.
92.
So the dream team crushes everybody. Well, now we still send the best. We don't crush people anymore. It's competitive now because the rest of the world raised their game. They didn't lower the hoop. They didn't widen the hoop. We need to raise our game as black people. If you look at a graph of how much homework a black kid does every night versus a white kid versus an Asian kid, it's like this. If you don't put in the time, you're not going to get the results. We have to stop bitching and moaning and whining about systemic racism and raise our effing game. That's what I'm all about.
Larry Elder, that is. Larry, by the way, what's the website to go to for your campaign? Is there a website?
LarryElder.com.
Can we put that link below, please?
And my book is As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. As you can see, my goals, Tom, are modest.
we got all of that below. Larry, once again, thank you for coming out, gang. We got another podcast, I believe, this Thursday.
Yes, Candace Owens will be joining us.
Owens will be here this Thursday. Looking forward to that as well.
By the way, can I, when we're shut up, I've got a coaching tree. Stephen Miller, one of Donald Trump's top aides. I first had him on my radio show when he was 14 years old. He was a student at Santa Monica High. And I thought he was brilliant. And over the years, I had him on the show 69 times. The reason I know the number is because he counted them.
It's a weird number, but yeah.
Candace Owens refers to me as her mentor. She wrote the foreword to my book, As Goes California. I wrote the foreword to her book, Blackout.
Oh, wow.
The guy that's the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, his name is Alex Marlowe. I gave him his first job in conservative radio. Michelle Malkin. First time she's ever on radio or TV, she was on my radio program. Ben Shapiro has publicly credited me with getting him into this business, in this field. Andrew Breitbart has publicly credited me with inspiring him to get into this field. There's a syndicated cartoonist named Antonio Branco. I liked his work. I went to my syndicator. I said, "This guy's brilliant." He goes, "No, we don't like him. He's brilliant. We don't like him." So over the years, I would send in the best ones. He now has a syndicated deal with Creator Syndicate. So I'm very proud that I've been able to influence a lot of these young people.
Yeah, respect. You've done, and by the way, and we can add names that you forgot to bring up. That's many other names that I brought it up. Ruben, a bunch of other people that we can add to that as well.
Right.
But it's great. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your voice. You're doing a great job. It's very necessary. Please continue.
Thank you.
Gang, have a great one. We'll do it again on Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.